Chapter 420. Suddenly, a demonic aura swept across the sky. All the soldiers in the Flying Dragon City were shocked to see a golden carriage with 9 dragons flying through the sky and stopping beside Xiao Yunli. On the carriage, a handsome young man in a white robe was holding a jade cup and sipping wine. In his arms, he was holding a young lady in green. But that young lady so beautiful. Her face was like a painting. Her eyebrows were lazy, and her deep eyes were cold. She was like a snow woman who had accidentally entered the human world. But this was the border, a bloody battlefield. Those standing in the city were all hot-blooded soldiers who wanted to protect their country. Where did this young man come from? How could he make the state preceptor bow down to him? Could he be the illegitimate son of the emperor who came here to train and accumulate military merits so that he could be conferred a title? What happened in the capital of the Great Xia dynasty had already spread to the western border. However, everyone kept their mouths shut about Ling Zhao's identity. Therefore, even Li Kuo had a trace of doubt on his face. But no matter what, this young man must have a great background to be able to make a 6th-grade divine emperor bow down to him. "Welcome, my lord." Xiao Yunli bowed and didn't get up. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. He walked down from the carriage and glanced at the soldiers in the city. Prepare to attack the great Zhou dynasty. What? Li Kuo and the others looked at each other. F***CK. Do you know how to march and fight? You didn't even discuss the battle plan, and you just rashly sent out the troops? Are you deaf? This lord has the dragon talisman in his hand. He is the most powerful person in the Great Xia dynasty, above the imperial power. Go and prepare. Xiao Yunli shouted coldly. His majesty shook the sky. Li Kuo and the others were even more puzzled. They couldn't help but guess. Most powerful person? Above the imperial power? Could it be? This person is the emperor's father? Inexplicably, everyone's eyes were filled with fear and excitement. Yes, even the state preceptor, who was a 6th-grade divine emperor, had to serve him respectfully. This young man's strength must be above his. Marching, planning, and strategies were all child's play in front of absolute strength. No, this was a blitz battle, taking them by surprise, not giving great Zhou time to prepare. Now that the state preceptor and his excellency had just arrived at the border, outsiders would definitely not know. At this moment, he was leading an army to battle. Wonderful. Dong dong dong. The war drums rang out, and the Flying Dragon City was filled with the sound of iron hooves stomping on the ground. Even the generals of the other dynasties were standing on the city wall with their mouths agape as they looked over. Was Great Xia courting death? The prince's horse turned into a demon, and the emperor stole the court. The current Great Xia was already swaying in the wind and rain, yet they still dared to take the initiative to send out troops. However, for some inexplicable reason, everyone felt a trace of unease in their hearts. Who were they going to hit? Only when Xiao Yunli took the lead and led the 3 defending generals of Great Xia to the borders of Great Xia did the northern region boil with excitement. Was the Great Xia declaring war on the Great Zhou Empire? Northern Border Impregnable Pass, Heavenly Strategy City. Originally, this city wasn't called this name, but after Ning Tiance became a god, the name was changed to Tiance. The city wall that pierced into the clouds had long been dyed pitch black by the blood. At this moment, on top of the city wall, the 5 generals stood side by side as they looked into the distance. Over there, thousands of soldiers were pressing down on them. Their pitch black armor was as ferocious as a flood, causing one to tremble in fear. General, we just received news that the Great Xia's imperial advisor, Xiao Yunli, led 10,000 Iron Wolf cavalry and arrived today. He immediately led his troops out of the city and rushed towards Heavenly Strategy City. Behind the 5 generals, a spy came to report. Great Xia must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts to actually take the initiative to invade. The leader had a stocky build and a square face with thick eyebrows. His aura was that of a rank 4 martial emperor. After Ning Tiance was summoned back to the capital, the nominal commander of the northern region was General Zhang Liao, who came from the capital. However, in reality, in the hearts of the thousands of soldiers in the northern region, this general was the soul of heavenly strategy. He was also the most loyal subordinate of the god of war, Ning Tiance, General Yuan Fei, the divine wood mantra, who once built a huge wooden prison with his own strength and killed 30,000 Iron Wolf cavalry. He became famous after that battle. After Ning Tiance left, he led the army of the northern region to defend Heavenly Strategy City to the death. Xiao Yunli actually came personally. At this moment, Yuan Fei's face was also solemn. In the end, the commander was the most important thing when the dynasty went on an expedition. The army could gather the strength of 10,000 people into one general. However, if the general's strength was not enough, how could he break through the army of 1,000 and stop the might of 10,000 Iron Wolf cavalry? Although Xiao Yunli did not comprehend the mantra, his strength was already at rank 6. Although Yuan Fei was not afraid of him, he could not gain the upper hand in a head-on confrontation. Moreover, the dynasty had not sent any food to the army for a year. The morale of the northern region had dropped to the bottom. It was not in line with the way of war to go to war. General, what should we do? Defend Heavenly Strategy City to the death. I don't believe that they can break through our impregnable fortress. Yuan Fei snorted coldly, and his eyes were solemn. If the god of war was here, they would not need to hide. As long as the god of war gave the order, who would dare to invade the border? Unfortunately, in the blink of an eye, he had left for more than 10 years. Ning Shun, I wonder if you have missed a time when you were in the capital? Report. Just as Yuan Fei was sighing inwardly, a figure came from the city and bowed. General Yuan Fei, the commander has given the order to open the city and fight. What? Yuan Fei's eyes were wide open. His spiritual aura was so strong that it almost shattered the void. He hated that Zhang Liao never cared about the lives of the northern region's soldiers. He was helpless. Of course, Emperor Zhou did this on purpose. His purpose was to erase the reverence the generals had for Ning Tiance. In the past 10 years, the northern region's millions of soldiers had died. Not only did the dynasty not reward them, but they also embezzled the army's food again and again. However, the god of war was still in the imperial capital. They did not dare to act rashly. Tell Commander Zhang that we cannot fight this war. Yuan Fei took a deep breath. His eyes suddenly calmed down. If the city gate was opened and the great Zhou dynasty accepted the war, the northern region might fall today. Xiao Yunli alone could defeat 2 emperor gods. Li Kuo and the others could kill the remaining 2 emperor realm generals in the northern region. At that time, they would lose their lives and reputation. Of course, since they followed Ning Tiance, Yuan Fei and the others had already given their lives to the battlefield. However, to the generals, watching their people being slaughtered for no reason, this feeling was extraordinary shame. General, beside Yuan Fei, the generals looked ferocious. Obviously, they could not bear this humiliation. Zhang Liao did not care about the lives of the northern region's soldiers at all. Can't fight? General Yuan Fei, let me give you a piece of advice. This is a military order. Are you going to defy the military order? The person stood up with a disdainful look on his face. I dare not. However, I am the defending general of the northern region. Although I am under Commander Zhang's command, I have the responsibility of guarding the border. If we fight this war, the great Zhou dynasty will definitely lose. May I ask if Commander Zhang can bear the responsibility of losing the city? Yuan Fei gritted his teeth. His eyes were burning with fire. There seemed to be an ancient tree behind him that revealed endless mysteries. After 10 years of suppression, he seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Ha ha ha! General Yuan Fei, you are wrong. Chapter 421. Just as Yuan Fei and the others were furious, a terrifying aura suddenly came from the center of the city. It soon arrived above their heads. The person who came was wearing a blue and black official robe. He looked arrogant, and his pale face had a hint of mockery. He was also an Emperor God expert, a second-stage Emperor God. Commander Zhang, Yuan Fei, and the others bowed, but the coldness in their eyes could not be concealed. General Yuan Fei, why do you always boost the morale of others and diminish our own? We have millions of soldiers in the north. There are 100,000 elite soldiers in this city alone. Why should we be afraid of the great Xia? Zhang Liao sneered sinisterly. He was ordered to come here to suppress the soldiers of the north. The more they died, the more they would understand the kindness of the emperor. As for the great Xia, it was just a declining dynasty. What was there to be afraid of? Besides, the great Xia attacked us first. If we retreat, we will lose the prestige of the great Zhou dynasty. I will personally lead the army against the enemy. All of you will be my deputies and follow me out of the city to fight the enemy. Yes, sir. Yuan Fei and the others sighed. They had no choice but to obey military orders. Moreover, Zhang Liao had volunteered to fight. If they hesitated, it would affect the morale of the army. The north had reached a dead end. Boom! There was a large army in the heavenly strategy city. There were 100,000 of them, and they looked majestic. Although these ordinary soldiers were mostly at the grand harmony and hollow spirit levels, they were still very powerful. When they gathered together, they caused the void to tremble and the sky to change color. The two armies faced each other at the foot of the city wall. The commanders of both sides stood in front of the army and looked at each other coldly. However, what confused the great Zhou generals was that the one standing in front of the great Xia army was not the imperial preceptor Qiao Yunli, but a handsome young man in a white robe. The young man was wearing a starry robe that shone brightly. Although his aura was only at the level of a god general, he had a cold arrogance that looked down on everyone. Qiao Yunli, Li Kuo, and the other god emperors of the great Xia dynasty stood respectfully 3 feet behind him, as if he was their leader. Who was that young man? Zhang Liao frowned as he turned to look at Yuan Fei and asked in a deep voice. I don't know. Great Xia actually dared to humiliate my imperial court by ascending a god general as the commander. They're simply seeking death. Whoever manages to behead that young man in this battle, I will definitely report this to the imperial court and ask for a reward. Zhang Liao shouted softly. But inexplicably, when he saw the young man's black eyes looking at him, he felt an inexplicable fear. That person is Zhang Liao. In front of the great Xia army, Ling Xiao stood indifferently with a calm expression. These were Ning Taiyan's supporters. Unfortunately, the decade-long depression had caused this once invincible and iron-blooded combat master to lose all of its former dignity, especially the person standing in front of the army. At first glance, one could tell that he was a treacherous person. He did not fit in with the rest of the generals. That's right, my lord. That man is Zhang Liao, the commander the army sent by the great Zhou dynasty to replace Ning Taiyan in the north. It is said that this person is Empress Zhou's younger brother, a second-stage god emperor. He is a cowardly and sinister person, and he has never personally participated in the war in the north. Li Kuo reported softly, while Ling Xiao nodded with a smile. Killing Empress Zhou's younger brother was enough to infuriate Emperor Zhou, right? Today, we are not attacking the city. We are only here to kill Zhang Liao. After finishing his words, Ling Xiao suddenly waved his hand. Behind him, the army rushed forward. Qiao Yunli and the others became the vanguard and charged towards Zhang Liao furiously. Good timing. You guys, hold Qiao Yunli and the others back. I will find an opportunity to kill the enemy commander. Zhang Liao shouted coldly. Instead of advancing, he retreated and hid behind the crowd. Yuan Fei and the others snorted. Spiritual light surged around their bodies and turned into iron-blooded momentum. They charged towards Qiao Yunli and the others. Boom! The vast spiritual might turned into lightning and raging wind. A storm was coming. The entire world turned gloomy for no reason. Young master, Yi Qingchan stood beside Ling Xiao. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock, especially when the two armies clashed. The murderous aura that filled the world made the girl's heart turn cold. Panic surged in her eyes. If you don't like it, you can return to the world first. Ling Xiao turned his head with a gentle gaze. Yi Qingchuan only shook her head with a smile. The last trace of struggle in her eyes gradually disappeared. Last time, when young master killed Yuan Yu's 3,000 disciples, she only watched from the side. Now that she finally had the chance to kill the enemy with him, how could she retreat so easily? Moreover, young master's action was to save Ning Tiance. It was a righteous action, since she wanted to fight side by side with him, who couldn't be killed in this world. Let's go. Let's go meet that Commander Zhang Liao. Ling Xiao grinned and stepped forward. The shadow of a dragon instantly followed him and turned into a 100-feet-long dragon. Roar! The ear-piercing roar shook the world. The two armies that were originally engaged in battle turned their heads to look at him with fearful gazes. Although most of the warhorses in the army had demonic veins, in front of a true dragon, their hooves went soft and they fell to the ground. In the sky, the shadow of a demonic dragon meandered. In the middle of its head, a white-clothed youth stood with his hands behind his back. He was like a god of the 9 heavens, arrogant and unparalleled. Although these people are Ning Tiance's confidants, if I don't kill them, Emperor Zhou won't be afraid. Ling Xiao muttered to himself. The black saber in his hand suddenly emitted a monstrous light. As the saber slashed down, the 8 laws evolved. Heaven and earth seemed to fall silent at this moment. 100 feet long saber light descended like the Milky Way and instantly fell towards the great Zhou army. No, Yuan Fei and the others were furious. However, they were blocked by Qiao Yunli. They could only watch as the saber light pierced through the void and chopped thousands of soldiers into minced meat. The thick smell of blood rolled like waves. The entire heavenly strategy city was covered in blood and broken limbs. However, at this moment, Ling Zhao's eyes were still calm and even contained a hint of joy. He could feel that the ripple in the primordial demonic blade was becoming clearer. It was obvious that after slaughtering thousands of lives, this ancient blade that could slay immortals and Buddhas was slowly awakening. In a corner of the battlefield, Yi Qingchuan waved her jade-like hand and frost seemed to spread around her. In just half a breath's time, the land within 100 feet radius turned into an ice domain. The great Zhou army that couldn't react in time were instantly frozen into ice sculptures and shattered upon contact. At the back of the crowd, Zhang Liao's face was already pale when he saw the figure riding on the dragon. Although he was a god emperor, his cultivation base was forcefully raised by elixirs. His combat strength was extremely low, especially at this moment when Ling Xiao slaughtered thousands of people with his saber. It made him lose all the fight. He only wanted to quickly retreat back to the city and curl up to defend. Retreat! Retreat! Clang! Clang! The sound of the gong echoed for thousands of miles. The eyes of Yuan Fei and the others dimmed. In the end, they didn't dare to stay and rushed back into the city. However, what surprised everyone was that although Qiao Yunli and the others chased after them, they didn't kill anymore. Instead, they directly passed by the soldiers and rushed toward Zhang Liao. Protect our commander! Yuan Fei shouted angrily and formed a seal with both hands. Below the city wall, the ground suddenly collapsed. 100 feet of divine would pierce through the clouds and blocked Xiao Yunli's figure. Vast divine power swept across the land and covered all directions. At this moment, Zhang Liao had already fled to the city wall and looked back with a frightened gaze. Damn it! Are these people of the Great Xia crazy? They actually want to kill me. Commander, don't worry. General Yuan Fei's divine wood prison is very powerful. I have never seen anyone who can break it. Beside him, a northern region general bowed and smiled. However, just as he finished speaking, the 100-meter-long demonic dragon in the distance suddenly opened its bloody mouth in anger and bit down on the 1,000-meter-long divine tree. Only Ning Tiance, the return of the god of war, would be able to raise the morale of the army. They would unite against a common enemy and defeat the Xia dynasty. However, you're just an ant standing on the second level. What you see is only the first level's barrenness. The estrangement of the monarch and his ministers was already the beginning of the dynasty's collapse. My lord, why don't we pursue the victory and break through the 7 passes of the great Zhou dynasty? Li Kuo and the others stood beside Ling Xiao, their eyes filled with joy. Heavenly Plan City. Today, the most majestic fortress in the great Zhou Empire's borders was finally breached. In the past 20 years, there was no one who did not fear the mention of the heavenly policy in this border area. The name of the god of war caused the 8 dynasties to tremble in fear. Not to mention attacking the heavenly policy city, just the sight of this fortress was enough to make everyone feel fear. However, no one expected that in today's battle, not only did the experts of the Great Xia dynasty kill the #1 commander of the Great Zhou Empire's borders, they even uprooted the entire fortress. From now on, the Great Zhou dynasty no longer had a heavenly policy. All of you, set up camp here. Ling Xiao coldly glanced at Li Kuo. Then, he carried Yi Qingchan and chased after Yuan Fei and the others. Imperial tutor, my lord is... Li Kuo and the others were stunned. Their eyes were filled with shock. Although their lord was somewhat impressive just now. However, he chased after tens of thousands of enemies alone. Was he going to send their heads back? My lord's methods are not something you can fathom. However, what shocked everyone was that Xiao Yunli only snorted coldly. Then, his figure also disappeared from the spot. It was only after everyone had left that a golden-robed figure gradually appeared in the distance. It can't be wrong, that aura. Beside him, Qiu Qinghan frowned slightly. She did not seem to understand. My lord, the person you're looking for. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. To be able to conceal his aura so easily in front of Xiao Yunli, a 6th grade divine emperor. This person's cultivation hiss. At the border of Great Zhou, in front of a steep mountain path, Yuan Fei and the other generals of Great Zhou stood in silence. Behind them, the remaining tens of thousands of soldiers hung their heads in dejection. Their eyes were dull. Today, the faith in their hearts had been shattered. Although they had suffered defeats over the years, they had never been slaughtered like stray dogs like today, especially when the Heavenly Policy City Pass was destroyed by a single seal. This made them feel even more despaired and vexed. General, what should we do now? All the generals looked at Yuan Fei with desolate expressions. They were not afraid of death. However, they did not want to die in such a cowardly manner. Although Qiao Yunli had displayed his invincible might in today's battle, he had fought against 2 great Zhou god emperors by himself and caused Great Zhou to be utterly defeated. However, the young man with Yulong was the main reason why Heavenly Policy City was destroyed. Yuan Fei relied on the divine Wadao law. He was confident that even a 6th grade divine emperor would not be able to escape from the divine prison easily. However, fear flashed across Yuan Fei's eyes when he thought of the ferocious demonic dragon. How could it be? When did such a terrifying young man appear in Great Xia? He rode on a real dragon and commanded the heavens and earth. Why was such a demonic figure not famous in the western border? Roar! Before Yuan Fei could think further, a dragon's roar suddenly resounded in the sky. The void shook and the heavens and earth lost their color. All the soldiers of Great Zhou looked up in despair and fear. In the next moment, their expressions froze. At this moment, Ling Xiao stood on the dragon's head with his hands behind his back. His face was handsome, and there seemed to be stars shining around him. He looked like a deity. However, he seemed to have chased after them alone. Could it be that he ran too fast? F***CK. I suspect that you're looking down on our great Zhou god emperors. However, since Yuan Fei did not move, no one dared to act rashly. How could a person with Yulong be so careless? Since he dared to come here alone, you must have something to rely on. Who exactly are you? The armor on Yuan Fei's body lit up. Obviously, he was on guard. From now on, I want all the soldiers of the northern region to flee to the south and pretend to be defeated. Open the city gates and welcome me in. Ling Xiao stepped out and landed in front of Yuan Fei and the others. For a moment, the soldiers of Great Zhou saw a trace of the god of war shadow in him. The same arrogance and indifference. The same strategizing. My life is the mandate of heaven. It doesn't matter if you don't understand. Just do as I say. But welcome you into the city. Although the Emperor of Great Zhou doesn't think highly of us and even makes things difficult for us, we are all soldiers of Great Zhou. How can we betray the dynasty? Who do you think you are? Welcome you into the city? You want to slaughter the soldiers of Great Zhou? Haha, your god of war doesn't care about you anymore. What's the point of you living? Ling Xiao shook his head and sneered. However, he was pondering. He was testing whether these people were still in awe of Ning Tiance. You can insult me, but you can't insult my general. Die! Yuan Fei, who was hesitating, suddenly shouted. Even though he was feeling uneasy, he still pulled out his saber and dashed toward Ling Xiao. The space buzzed and blood chi shook the sky. Divine trees that were hundreds of feet long rose from the ground and shattered the entire mountain range. The Dao sound resounded and the sky collapsed. Obviously, Yuan Fei had used all his strength in this attack. Chapter 423. Haha, you're just a bunch of stray dogs. When Ning Tiance was sent back to the capital by Emperor Zhou, why weren't you so angry? Now, you've learned how to be fierce. Ling Xiao smiled faintly, but he didn't move at all. There wasn't even a trace of spiritual energy around him. If he wanted to, he could enter the realm at any time to avoid Yuan Fei's attack. Shut up. God Ning will always be a god. I won't allow you to insult the war god of the north. Yuan Fei was furious. Even though they hadn't seen each other for 20 years, Ning Tiance was still more important to him than his life, his imperial power, and everything else. He could die on the battlefield, he could die in battle, but he absolutely would not allow anyone to insult the faith in his heart. Boom! Monstrous spiritual energy surged like waves and enveloped the void above Ling Xiao's head. On the ground, the divine trees lined up and the mountains collapsed. They charged toward Ling Xiao with unstoppable momentum. However, just as Yuan Fei's figure appeared 30 feet away from Ling Xiao suddenly raised his hand, causing Yuan Fei's footsteps to abruptly stop. Even the divine trees under the ground stopped strangely in front of Ling Xiao. Huh? What happened to General Yuan? The generals of the Great Zhou dynasty looked at each other in shock. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the furious general of the northern region suddenly knelt on the ground. F*CK. Did the general betray the Great Zhou dynasty? How is that possible? I don't believe it. General, should I kneel down too? In an instant, many of the generals of the north widened their eyes and hesitated. Greetings, war god. At this moment, Yuan Fei suddenly shouted, and everyone's expression froze. War god. Boom! Countless spiritual energies surged, and monstrous killing intent surged. Yuan Fei, you can surrender to the enemy, and you can give up your dignity in order to survive. But you can't insult the war god. Why aren't you kneeling? Have you forgotten the glory of the past? Ling Xiao looked solemn as he looked at the generals of the Great Zhou dynasty. Kneel? Do you think we're all afraid of death like Yuan Fei? Even if we die today, we will definitely kill you. Before the generals could finish speaking, Ling Xiao gently waved his hand. A stream of light shot out and was caught by the general in the lead. Oomph. Young man, you don't have any martial virtues. You actually want to sneak attack me. Plop. While all the Great Zhou soldiers were puzzled, the general holding the golden talisman suddenly knelt down again. Greetings, war god. What the hell? What the F*CK is going on? At this moment, everyone's face was filled with confusion. Yuan Fei took a deep breath and raised his head to look at the young man in front of him. He asked coldly, "Why is the war god token in your hands?" "What? God of war token?" Everyone walked up to the general and looked at the ancient command talisman in his hand. In the next moment, their eyes widened. "War god, why is it in my hands?" Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the sky. His eyes faintly carried a wisp of vicissitudes. "Do you think that if Ning Tiance didn't give it to me, I would be able to snatch it from him? But Yuan Fei frowned. Seeing the war god token was like seeing the war god in person. It could command millions of soldiers in the north. How could the war god give such an important token to a young man from the enemy's dynasty? Do you think that I led the army to attack the great Zhou dynasty for these cities? Ling Xiao shook his head in disappointment. The war god Ning Tiance was trapped in the capital of the great Zhou dynasty for 20 years. He was easily humiliated by the eldest princess and even had divine overlords watching him when he went out. The war god, the commander of millions of soldiers, has never been defeated in 10 years. But now, he is being kept in the capital like an animal. Boom! Hearing this, Yuan Fei and the others clenched their fists. The murderous aura around them shot up to the sky and stirred up the clouds. How could they not know what Ling Xiao said? But military orders were like mountains. The war god returned to the capital to fulfill his promise. They didn't dare to act recklessly. What about you? You are an iron-blooded general, but you are being humiliated by a dog sent by the great Zhou Emperor. How ridiculous is that? Ling Xiao took a deep breath. His body seemed to be surrounded by golden light that was filled with righteousness. My brother and I met by fate. When I learned about his fate, I was heartbroken. Today, I led the army here not for the mountains and rivers, but to save my brother from the prison and restore the glory of the war god. You can choose not to believe me or cooperate with me, but I will sacrifice millions of lives in the great Zhou dynasty for my brother's return. Boom! This time, Yuan Fei and the others no longer had any hesitation or doubt on their faces. They understood now. It turned out that the young and mysterious commander of the great Xia dynasty was the war god's brother. But why did he kill the old subordinates of the war god and destroy Tiance's city? F***CK. Why? Of course, it was to refine the demonic saber. No, it was to intimidate the great Zhou emperor. I know that you must be wondering why I, the brother of the war god, killed his soldiers, Ling Xiao sneered. His eyes flashed fiercely. If I didn't do that, why would the great Zhou emperor let him return to lead the army against the enemy? What? You mean, as generals, Yuan Fei and the others were naturally sensitive. They instantly understood what Ling Xiao meant. If the great Zhou dynasty broke through all 7 gates, the great Zhou emperor would definitely panic. There were many god emperors in the great Zhou dynasty, but only Ning Tiance could lead the army to war. Moreover, the people in the northern region were all loyal to Ning Tiance. If other people were here, they wouldn't be able to raise the morale and turn the situation around. Wonderful. As expected of the war god's brother. Such a scheming mind. He really has the style of a commander. So what if we sacrifice tens of thousands of soldiers? As long as the war god returns and is no longer imprisoned. So what if we all die? General. War. No, young master. Then what should we do now? Yuan Fei and the others had already calmed down. They looked at Ling Xiao with eyes full of respect. If it wasn't for this mysterious young master strategy, they might not be able to see the war god again in their lifetime. It's very simple. In the northern region, no one should know better than you who is on our side and who is on the great Zhou emperor's side. From now on, I will lead the army to pursue the enemy. You all will abandon the city and retreat. Of course, there will be casualties in the process. I hope you all can understand. Ling Xiao said indifferently. Yuan Fei and the others immediately nodded with a righteous look. Understood. Don't worry, young master. As long as the war god returns, we will die without regrets. But we are the soldiers of the war god. Naturally, we are willing to die. Young master, you better not hurt the people along the way. Otherwise, the war god will blame you. Yuan Fei pondered for a moment and finally said coldly, "Oh." Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. Suddenly, a cold light flashed across his eyes. Although Yuan Fei didn't have any luck, the Tao law of the divine wood was indeed interesting. Using the divine wood as a prison to imprison heaven and earth. Moreover, he was a god emperor. His Tao law was close to completion. Wasn't it better than the golden Tao law on Xiaofeng? Moreover, the latter's mission had not been completed yet. and Yuan Fei was not loyal to him. Now, Ling Xiao only needed one more Dao Law to gather all 9. The Sky Demon's true body would also enter the 3rd refinement realm. At that time, his strength would definitely increase by a large margin. Previously, Ling Xiao was not in a hurry to find the Dao Law and break through to the 3rd refinement realm because he was worried. It was more or less difficult to suppress the demonic will as a god general. Now that he was a god overlord, even if he could not completely suppress it, he could hide in the realm to cultivate and not expose his identity. As a villain, if he didn't want to die, he should not be reckless. As for Yuan Fei, he had to think of a way to let him die naturally. What? I am cruel, heartless, and not human? Buffed. I just want to work hard to increase my strength and build a stable and prosperous world for the people of Shijian. Sorry, I am indeed not human. I will be the only immortal in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Beep. The host's thoughts are in line with the villain style. Congratulations, host. System reward, 5,000 villain points. Chapter 424. Young Master. The general guarding the next pass is called Gao Wenyong. He used to be Ning Shun's military advisor. He is a 2nd-grade divine emperor, but he is an expert in formations and poison. According to my investigation, he has secretly sided with Emperor Zhou and instigated many generals to work for him. He has always been at odds with me. I wonder if your dragon can break his formation. At this moment, Yuan Fei naturally did not know what Ling Xiao was thinking. There were 7 passes in Great Zhou, and each pass had 1 general. Heavenly Plan City was the first pass, and its defense was the strongest. It was guarded by 3 emperors and 4 kings. However, today, the city was breached because Zhang Liao was arrogant and took the initiative to fight. If Gao Wenyong defended the city with his life and sealed the city with formations, even Xiao Yunli would not be able to break it easily. If so, once Emperor Zhou sent reinforcements, Ling Xiao's plan would fail. Oh, formations and poison? I'm afraid not. A trace of evil flashed across Ling Xiao's eyes. He then waved his hand at Yuan Fei. General Yuan, may I have a word with you? Young master, what can I do for you? Ling Xiao did not care about array formations or the poison Dao. With the formation breaking talisman in hand, although its power was not there, it was nothing to worry about. However, could he use this opportunity to ask Yuan Fei to give up his life? General Yuan, you said that you were willing to die for the battle god. Do you mean it? Ling Xiao's expression was solemn, with a hint of seriousness. Of course. If not for Ning Shun, I would have died on the battlefield. My life belongs to the battle god. Yuan Fei's expression was solemn. He did not hesitate at all. Good. General Yuan is righteous. When the battle god returns, I will inform you. Ling Xiao nodded. Suddenly, he used his divine sense to send a message. General, since this man is a former subordinate of the god of war, and now he has pledged allegiance to Emperor Zhou, I will definitely kill him to deter those who have second thoughts. But before that, we should let the soldiers of the northern region see how sinister he and Emperor Zhou are. Only then can we break the city, kill the enemy, and unite the people. Young master, you mean I will blend into the great Zhou army and enter the city with the general. At that time, you will find a chance to argue with Gao Wenyong and let everyone know that he has betrayed his faith. Then, Ling Xiao wanted to say something, but hesitated. His voice was cold, but his eyes were filled with bitterness. Young master, I understand. Yuan Fei was shocked at first, but he quickly calmed down. With Gao Wenyong's sinister and cautious nature, he would not easily open the city to welcome the enemy. If they wanted to break the city, they would have to kill him first. However, he needed a reason to kill his city guard general. If Yuan Fei died, it would be the best fuse. He was already at odds with Gao Wenyong. If he were to die in Gao Wenyong's defense, anyone who still had faith in their hearts and was loyal to the war god would definitely revolt and kill him. What's more, with the young master in the army, with his ability to strategize, how could he be afraid that the people wouldn't rebel? As long as the city gates were opened, who would be able to resist the might of Qiao Yunli, a sixth-grade divine emperor? Other than this person, is there anyone else in the northern region who has betrayed us? Ling Zhao's eyes were serious, but Yuan Fei shook his head. Gao Wenyong is only a military advisor. He was originally only in charge of guarding the city with the war god. He never really went into battle with Ningxuan. Therefore, he is not as brave as the soldiers of the northern region. Other than him, the remaining 6 city guards were all trained by Ningxuan. Young master, you can rest assured. As for the soldiers in the army, most of them are spies of Emperor Zhou. All right, they're just ants. There is no need to worry about them. General Yuan, I will rely on you for this great plan. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and suddenly bowed to Yuan Fei. This plan is very important. General Yuan, it is best that no one else knows about it. Young master, don't worry. Yuan Fei knows the importance of this matter. Let's go. Ling Xiao waved his hand and sent Floey back to its realm. Ever since it had swallowed Yuan Fei's divine tree, the dog had been burping and farting all the way back. Its aura was actually showing signs of a breakthrough. Damn, is this animal's innate ability really that of swallowing? In the end, Ling Xiao did not think too much about it. He used his soul seal to send a message to Qiao Yunli and told him about his next plan. Only then did he sneak into the great Zhou army and head towards a majestic city in the distance. During the journey, Yuan Fei did not mention Ling Zhao's plan. However, he told everyone that in the future, they would listen to Ling Zhao's orders. Of course, with the war god token in hand, these northern generals did not dare to disobey. Even if they disobeyed, he could just find an excuse to kill them. There was nothing to worry about. As for Ling Zhao's identity, now that Zhang Liao was dead, the only people who saw Ling Xiao riding the dragon were the people of Great Xia. No matter how scheming Gao Wenyong was, he probably would not have thought that the Great Xia's commander-in-chief was in the Great Zhou army. Great Zhou Imperial City, Central Imperial Palace. The Great Zhou Emperor coldly looked at a black-clothed figure below. His face was gloomy. You are saying that the Great Xia's imperial preceptor, Qiao Yunli, led the army to attack Heavenly Strategy City, and Heavenly Strategy City has fallen? Yes. Emperor, the spies at the front lines have reported that at noon today, Great Xia suddenly launched an attack and headed straight for Heavenly Strategy City. Although Commander Zhang Liao tried his best to resist, in the end, he was no match for Qiao Yunli and was killed on the spot. Now, the Great Xia's army is heading for the second city, Chongyun City. Great Xia is courting death. First, they kill my princess. Now, they are launching an attack. Pass down my orders. Ask Gao Wenyong to defend Chongyun City to the death. Order the other 6 generals to lead their troops to reinforce Chongyun City. We have millions of soldiers in the north. Why should we be afraid of a mere Great Xia? The Great Zhou Emperor coldly shouted. The shadow of a dragon appeared behind him, and the temple appeared. It was extremely majestic. Emperor, the northern generals have long held grudges against the imperial court. Gao Wenyong has been entering the imperial capital frequently in recent years. I'm afraid order the northern general, Pei Qinbao, to lead the 70,000 golden-scaled guards to the north. He will take over the role of commander-in-chief and attack the Great Xia bastards. The Great Zhou Emperor pondered for a moment and finally said coldly. Of course, he knew that it was the best time to send Ning Tiance back to the north to lead the army. But releasing the tiger back to the mountain and letting the tiger fight for the dragon's luck had happened since ancient times. Unless it was absolutely necessary, the Great Zhou Emperor did not dare to take the risk. The northern general, Pei Qinbao, was a 4th-stage god emperor. In terms of cultivation, he was 1 stage higher than Ning Tiance. He was the Great Zhou Emperor's most trusted general. The 70,000 golden scale guards were the most elite troops of the Great Zhou Empire. They were invincible. With Pei Qinbao leading the army, the war could be settled. Wait, send a message to the Great Qin and Great Qi empires. Tell them there is a demon in the Great Xia. The 3 empires will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and divide the Great Xia. If they dare to attack the great Zhou Empire, I will make sure that they cannot protect their empire. Yes. In the north of the great Zhou Empire, a golden-robed figure appeared in the sky. He frowned as he looked at the countless figures below. How could it be? Why did he suddenly disappear? Did he sense that I was spying on him? My lord, could it be that he used some secret technique to hide his aura? Qiu Qinghan stood behind him. There was a complicated coldness in her eyebrows. Not necessarily. It is also possible that he used a void secret treasure and left temporarily. But, as long as I can protect this person, nothing can escape from my grasp. My lord is wise. Young master, Chongyan City is in front of us. Yuan Fei stood beside Ling Xiao. The latter had already changed into the great Zhou battle armor and had a different aura. Go. Ling Xiao nodded. Yuan Fei immediately stepped forward and stood before the city gate. He shouted, Heavenly Strategy City's General Yuan Fei is here. My troops have been defeated. Open the city gate quickly. General Yuan? Didn't you swear to live and die with the Heavenly Strategy City? If the Heavenly Strategy City is defeated, why did you escape to my Chongyan City? Above the city wall, someone sneered. Presumptuous. The Great Xia Empire is right behind you. If you hesitate any longer, your Chongyan City will follow in the footsteps of my Heavenly Strategy City. Yuan Fei shouted angrily. His emperor's aura surged and intimidated thousands of soldiers. General Yuan, please wait for a moment. I need to report this to Lord Gao before I can make a decision. The city guard did not dare to hesitate. He turned around and rushed into the city. Chapter 425. Oh, Yuan Fei and the others are here? In a majestic palace in Heavy Cloud City, Gao Wenyong was wearing a black robe. A cold smile appeared on his slender face. My lord, they are here. They are outside the city now. They are clamoring to enter the city and join us. Below the palace, a general in black armor sneered. My lord, Yuan Fei has always been arrogant. He has always looked down on you because of Ning Tiance. Why don't we take this opportunity to get rid of him? Idiot! Gao Wenyong glared at him. Do I look like a narrow-minded person? Yes, no, it was me who was being rash. Go, open the city gate and let Yuan Fei and the others in. Then, activate the city defense array and defend Heavy Cloud City. Gao Wenyong shouted coldly. He turned around and sat on the big chair in the palace. His eyes were gloomy. Of course, he wanted to take this opportunity to kill Yuan Fei. However, now that the enemy was here, Yuan Fei was an emperor god. His combat strength was stronger than Jiang Chen's. With him around, Jiang Chen would be more powerful. Besides, the soldiers in the north respected Yuan Fei's character. If Jiang Chen killed Yuan Fei, he would become the target of public criticism. These years, although he had been close to Emperor Zhou, he was still loyal to Ning Tiance on the surface. He only dared to do something behind Emperor Zhou's back. Gao Wenyong knew that no matter how much time had passed, as long as Ning Tiance was still alive, the North would still belong to the God of War. What he needed to do was to please Emperor Zhou so that he could leave this place as soon as possible. In the future, he would definitely be promoted. He had already sent a report to Emperor Zhou. He believed that there would be a response soon. As long as he defended Heavy Cloud City, even Xiao Yunli could not do anything to him. When the army of the Empire arrived, he would show some of his skills. He would be rewarded with merits and be promoted to the top of his life. I, Gao Wenyong, am indeed a military advisor. The situation of the great Zhou dynasty is under my control. Boom! The gate of Heavy Cloud City opened. Ling Xiao followed Yuan Fei and the others into the city with a heavy and lonely expression on his face. The moment the general stepped into the city, Ling Xiao could clearly sense the power of a formation in the air, completely sealing off the entire city. Ha! Isn't this the invincible General Yuan? Gao Wenyong descended from the sky and landed in front of Yuan Fei. Behind him, there were several generals of the great Zhou dynasty who looked at Yuan Fei and the others with mixed emotions and indifference. In short, It was very complicated. 10 years ago, everyone was loyal to Ning Tiance, serve the dynasty, and slay the enemy on the battlefield. Although he was training in life and death situations, he had no regrets and was filled with hot-bloodedness. However, when the war god returned to the imperial court, he took off his armor. Although he was loyal to the emperor and valued relationships, it was still somewhat sorrowful. Especially in the past 10 years, the wars in the northern region had been endless. Their old subordinates had died tragically, but the dynasty had ignored them. Gradually, the soldiers began to resent them. If Ning Tiance had not left and even raised his army against the dynasty, why would they be targeted and die for nothing? Dying on the battlefield was the final destination of the soldiers. However, who would be willing to die for no reason and for no reason? This was the reason why Gao Wenyong's support was growing. They longed to leave this land that they once loved. It was not betrayal, but they were tired. Gao Wenyong. Yuan Fei's expression was gloomy as he muttered to himself. Ling Zhao's plan was ruthless and merciless. It sentenced him to death directly. However, if it was not so, the heavy cloud city would be difficult to break, and the dynasty would not have sent Ningxuan back. Everything was for the war god and the millions of soldiers in the northern region. General Yuan, you abandoned the city and caused Commander Zhang to die in the hands of the Xia dynasty. Do you think I should capture you or let you go? Gao Wenyong already had a deep grudge against Yuan Fei. A few years ago, Yuan Fei even questioned his sinister intentions in front of everyone. Although he did not dare to kill Yuan Fei on the spot, he still mocked him. Gao Wenyong, do you think you can protect the heavy cloud city by hiding here? I advise you not to be careless. The state preceptor of the great Xia dynasty is here, and he is a rank 6. You can't stop him. You'd better report this to the imperial court as soon as possible so that they can send reinforcements. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Yuan Fei retorted. According to Ling Zhao's words, he deliberately stirred up trouble. As expected, Gao Wenyong's expression turned gloomy. General Yuan, the two armies are at war now. How can you shake the morale of the soldiers? Humph! Come, take away General Yuan's general talisman and let him rest in the general's hall. Gao Wenyong, how dare you? Behind Yuan Fei, everyone was agitated. They quickly stood beside Yuan Fei to protect him. Spiritual light whistled around them, stirring up the wind and clouds. Gao Wenyong, you and I are both former subordinates of Ningxuan. Don't forget the rules set by Ningxuan. Everything is for the northern region. Ningxuan? Ha! We are fighting to the death here. Where is Ningxuan now? He's probably drinking and eating meat in the imperial capital, isn't he? Gao Wenyong mocked coldly with a ferocious expression. After the fall of Heavenly Strategy City, the faith of the god of war was no longer as solid as before. Now that Yuan Fei had surrendered, it was the best opportunity for him to incite Ning Tiance's loyal soldiers to betray him. Upon hearing his words, a hint of loneliness flashed across the eyes of many northern region generals. Gao Wenyong, how dare you humiliate Ningxuan? You are courting death. Yuan Fei sneered in his heart, but his face was filled with anger. He immediately stepped forward and was about to pounce on Gao Wenyong. How dare you? Are you trying to rebel in my heavy cloud city? As soon as Gao Wenyong finished speaking, countless black-armored figures walked out from the surrounding city walls. They pulled their bows and locked onto Yuan Fei and the tens of thousands of soldiers behind him. You take him down. Gao Wenyong's lips curled into a sinister smile. Although Yuan Fei was an emperor god with a powerful cultivation, most of the soldiers behind him were low-level cultivators. The reason why General Yuan was loved and respected was because he loved his soldiers like his own children. Therefore, Gao Wenyong believed that he would not be impulsive. Stop. Remember, the northern region is the most important. Yuan Fei gritted his teeth and finally removed his emperor's aura. He sighed softly. Boom! The two God King experts took a step forward and cautiously captured Yuan Fei. They then headed towards a black palace in the distance. You defeated army. Go to the northern region and set up camp. In the future, You will be under the command of my heavy cloud city. Those who do not obey and dare to walk around the city will be killed immediately. Gao Wenyong took a deep look at everyone and turned to leave. General, the generals of Heavenly Strategy City looked ferocious. However, Ling Xiao shook his head slightly. Everyone, please be patient. I will send an army here tomorrow. I will need your cooperation. If you are trapped now, I am afraid it will affect the plan of the war god's return. Yes. Hearing this, the generals gritted their teeth and reluctantly walked toward the northern region. Looking at Yuan Fei, who was being taken to the city by Gao Wenyong, Ling Zhao's lips curled into a smile. He naturally did not care about a mere heavy cloud city. He had spent so much effort to set up this trap. Of course, it was not to break through the city. It was for the divine Wood Dao law on Yuan Fei. After all, Yuan Fei was an old subordinate of Ning Tian's. He was the right-hand man. If he killed Yuan Fei rashly, it would inevitably arouse suspicion and disappoint the war god. Killing two birds with one stone. Why not do it? Chapter 426. At night, in the Heavenly Strategies army, Ling Xiao looked at the generals in front of him and pondered. That's not right. Gao Wenyong locked General Yuan up alone. Could it be that he wants to take the opportunity to... The generals narrowed their eyes and suddenly felt uneasy. Gao Wenyong and General Yuan were not on good terms for a long time. Now that everyone was here to seek refuge, wouldn't it be easy for him to find a reason to kill General Yuan? Young master, what should we do? No, we should rush into the city now and save General Yuan. Wait. Ling Xiao shook his head and sighed. This is just my guess. You all saw it during the day. Gao Wenyong can't wait for us to resist so that he can have an excuse to kill us. How about this? I'm the only stranger in the army. I think Gao Wenyong won't pay attention to a divine general like me. Young master, you can't. There are at least one divine king and two divine overlords outside the encampment. Once you walk out of here, I'm afraid they will. Someone in the crowd exclaimed. At this point, there's no need to worry. General Yuan is my brother Ning Tian's most loyal general. If anything happens to him, how can I face my brother in the future? You don't have to persuade me. If Gao Wenyong really dares to, I will make him pay. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and took off his heavy armor. Later, you all just need to help me attract the attention of the experts in the heavy cloud city. I will return as soon as I see General Yuan. On the way here, Ling Xiao had asked Yuan Fei to wait for his news before taking action. What he needed to do now was to personally send the great Zhou's general on his last journey. As for Gao Wenyong, F*CK, a second-grade divine emperor, do you really think I'm afraid of him? Young master, hearing this, the generals were in awe. No wonder Ning Tian's was willing to become brothers with such a young man and even gave him the god of war token. It turns out that young master is just like the god of war. He loves his generals and is loyal to us. He is willing to sacrifice himself for us. Young master, righteousness. Several generals stood up and bowed deeply to Ling Xiao. Their faces were filled with gratitude. All right, you guys go and make some noise to help me escape. Ling Xiao's figure disappeared, and the Heavenly Strategies generals immediately stepped out of the tent and headed into the distance. Ladies and gentlemen of Heavy Cloud City, we have been on the run for 3 days. We are famished. Can we? At this time, Ling Xiao had already left the northern part of the city and was walking towards a large hall in the city. How could a mere divine king possibly sense his aura? Since it was an act, of course, everyone had to participate. What a sense of immersion. A third-rate author would like to kindly remind everyone that it would be a joy to be immersed in the story. Heavy Cloud City, Central Hall. Although it was late at night, the hall was still brightly lit. Ling Zhao's spiritual sense spread out and soon sensed Yuan Fei's aura. At this moment, 2 deity overlords and a few deity generals were standing outside the hall. The place was heavily guarded. The palace hall was enveloped by a spirit formation. Evidently, Gao Wenyong was very afraid of Yuan Fei. However, be it deity overlords, deity generals, or spirit formations, they were useless against Ling Xiao. Suddenly, the sky darkened and the cold moon seemed to be covered by dark clouds. The deity overlords and deity generals only felt a gust of wind blowing before everything returned to normal. A black moon floated in Ling Xiao's eyes, and his lips curled into a smile. The boundary-breaking talisman in his hand flickered with a mysterious light, and his figure instantly appeared in the main hall. Yuan Fei's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened, and a terrifying aura suddenly descended from his body. However, when he saw the peerless figure in white, a sad smile finally appeared on his face. Once, he thought that his final destination was the battlefield. Dying in the hands of the enemy was the greatest glory for a soldier. However, forget it. His entire life was for the North. Only when the god of war returned would he know that he had not let him down. Young master, Yuan Fei took a deep breath, and his eyes glowed with determination. If you meet Ning Shun, please send my regards. I, Yuan Fei, have never let down my country, my people, or Ning Tiance. Good. General, you're loyal and righteous. Ling Xiao's eyes glistened with tears. He raised his head and sighed. It's an honor for the North to have such a righteous person like you. Young master, come on. Everything for Ning Shun, for the North. Yuan Fei closed his eyes and dispersed his aura. Ling Xiao muttered to himself for a moment before sighing softly. General, I am in awe of your loyalty and righteousness. Even though you are dead now, I do not wish to see your cultivation go down the drain. I have a method that can pass down the Tao law to you and use it as my motivation to move forward. I wonder if you are willing to, young master. You must be joking. If it weren't for you, the North would never have peace. If you're talking about righteousness, you're the one who drove the wolf to devour the tiger. You're willing to bear the bad name of killing people just to save the god of war. You're the one who's truly righteous. Since I'm already dead, you can take my cultivation if it's useful to you. Yuan Fei bowed deeply to Ling Xiao. Young master, I'll leave the North to you. General, you can rest in peace. I'll make sure the North will have no more wars in the future. Ling Xiao sighed, but a cold glint flashed in his eyes. The North? Wars? It's adjacent to Great Xia, Great Qin, and Great Qi. When I conquer Great Qin, I'll have 3 dynasties in my hands. Isn't it easy to destroy Great Qi? By then, all 4 dynasties will be mine. Do I still have to fight and play? If that's the case, Yuan Fei can rest assured. Young master, do it. All right, General Yuan Fei, open your mind. Don't panic. It'll be quick. Ling Xiao looked sad. He took Yuan Fei's soul into his soul sea and pointed to the soul palace in the distance. General, go. All right. Yuan Fei nodded. His steps were heavy. His life was a hasty one. Fortunately, he died a worthy death. Even his Tao and Tao could be used by his young master. Now he had no regrets. Buzz, monstrous soul radiance surged. The Black Soul Palace suddenly rose and broke through the threshold of a 4th-stage divine emperor. At the same time, the Tao of divine would merged. Ling Xiao's eyes suddenly became heavy. Then he disappeared on the spot, leaving Yuan Fei's body lying in the hall. It gradually turned cold. Beep. The host's behavior matches the style of a villain. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the system reward, 10,000 villain points. Boom. Within the realm, Ling Xiao's figure appeared. Demonic qi surged from his body and vaguely transformed into a 300-meter-tall giant that covered the sky. At this time, the demonic shadow around him was no longer the same one. It turned into a dragon that was somewhat similar to Liang Yi's evil dragon combat body. Ling Xiao didn't know if it was an illusion, but he could feel that the vitality and blood in his body seemed to have increased by several times. As expected, the Sky Demon's 9 transformations, 1 transformation, 1 form. After 9 transformations, it will become the number 1 demonic body in history. Buzz. As Ling Xiao's demonic body appeared, the 9 Tao laws suddenly merged into one and turned into a demonic sun that enveloped his entire body. A terrifying aura quietly spread out. The entire realm was filled with demonic wind. Demonic intent shook the sky. Everyone looked at the end of the world in shock. There was no light. It was as if the end of the world had come. Vaguely, it was as if an ancient, ferocious demon was awakening. Chapter 427. Time passed slowly. It felt like 10,000 years, but it also felt like an instant. Before Ling Zhao's eyes, heaven and earth started to crumble. The sun and moon reversed. All living beings turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. Everything felt like the end of the world. However, after the end of the world, a new sun rose in the sky. Living beings evolved. Vast miracles floated in the 9 heavens. Cycle after cycle of destruction, birth and destruction. This cycle continued endlessly. However, during this process, Ling Zhao's will seem to be everlasting. It gradually became one with heaven and earth, until a beam of demonic light tore through the void. The demonic crow that was originally hovering in the sky let out an ear-piercing cry. Then, everyone watched in shock as the entire realm suddenly darkened until it was pitch black. All sounds disappeared, and there was no longer any trace of light. Ling Zhao sat cross-legged in the void. His expression was calm. A beam of demonic light extinguished between his eyebrows and finally disappeared. The sky demon was the source of the destruction of heaven and earth. It stood high in the 9 heavens and was undefeated for billions of eras. Compared to those true almighties in heaven and earth, the current Ling Zhao could be said to be weak. As for the evolution of all these reincarnation cycles, wasn't it also the beginning of life and death? After going through thousands of sins, he stepped on the 9 heavens with his head held high. This is the power of the sky demon's 3rd refinement stage. 9 laws form 1 law. The heavenly Tao creates the world, and the sky demon destroys the world. At this moment, the aura of the 9 laws on Ling Zhao's body dissipated. In other words, the 9 laws that were originally fused together had now merged into one. The World Destroyer Law. It did not exist in heaven and earth. It cannot be reincarnated. It was resisted by the heavenly Tao. Now, with the 3rd refinement stage of the demon body, the 9 laws became one. Ling Zhao actually succeeded. He did not accept the 3,000 laws to create the world. He only wanted to destroy the world, rebuild the 6 paths of reincarnation, and achieve the beginning of himself. Ling Zhao raised his head and looked into the distance. The darkness began to recede. Light shone on the ground again. Destruction was just the beginning of a new life. Sky Demon Sutra. At a point. Boom! 70,000 villain points were instantly squandered, and Ling Zhao's demonic shadow instantly materialized. Sky Demon's true bones? However, just as the true scripture was about to enter the 4th revolution realm, a loud demonic chant suddenly sounded in his mind. 10 Sky Demon true bones were used to reconstruct the Sky Demon's true body. It's a new journey. Ling Zhao shook his head and sighed. Although he had comprehended the World Devastator Tao Law, it was only the beginning. To achieve perfection, one needed to experience the 9 great Taos and inherit the mysteries of heaven and earth. The final Tao was the myriad Tao. As for the Sky Demon's true bones, although Ling Zhao's physical body was the rebirth of the Sky Demon, it was obvious that only the primordial Sky Demon that was born in the depths of the primordial chaos could be called an eternal true demon. Only by finding 10 Sky Demon bones and fusing them into his body would he be able to unleash the archaic demonic might. However, now that his demonic body had entered the 3rd revolution realm, Ling Zhao's physical body and blood energy seemed to have increased tremendously. In other words, even if he stopped cultivating, he could easily live for 1,000 years with this sea of blood energy. 1st revolution, demonic transformation. 2nd revolution, innate divine strength. 3rd revolution, royal yang blood energy. 4th revolution, What kind of talent would he awaken? In heavy cloud city, the darkness dissipated and the light of dawn shone on the land. Ling Xiao stood in front of Yuan Fei's corpse and thought for a long time. Then he took out the poison that he had prepared, opened Yuan Fei's mouth, and poured it into his body. In a short moment, Yuan Fei's corpse started to decay and his body could be vaguely seen. Then an extremely mournful scream resounded through the entire heavy cloud city. Gao Wenyong, how dare you poison me? Boom! The originally quiet ancient city was suddenly filled with spiritual light that shot into the sky. Countless figures suddenly landed. Even the heavenly strategies generals who were ordered not to leave the northern part of the city had appeared in front of the main hall in the city without caring about their lives. At this moment, the generals' faces were filled with intense killing intent. They heard the voice clearly just now. It was General Yuan's voice. The resentment and despair contained in the voice made them feel extremely uneasy. Ling Zhao's figure quietly appeared in front of the crowd. His face was also gloomy. Young master, just now, I've been looking for General Yuan for an entire night, but I couldn't find him. This main hall is sealed by a formation and is heavily guarded outside. It's obvious that General Yuan is inside, but Ling Xiao wanted to say something but stopped. The generals already had their guesses in their hearts. Damn it, open the main hall. The heavenly strategies generals gritted their teeth and took a step forward. Although there was a hint of confusion in the eyes of the guards, it quickly turned into coldness. Have you forgotten Lord Gao's words? If you dare to walk around the city, you will be executed immediately. I'll kill you first. Stop. Gao and Yong and the other heavy cloud guards descended from the sky and stood in front of the main hall. At this moment, there was also a hint of doubt on his face. In particular, the formation outside the main hall was not broken. Obviously, no one had broken in. However, that voice clearly came from the main hall. Could it be that Yuan Fei directed and acted on his own? Has anyone entered the main hall? Gao Wenyong's eyes were gloomy as he asked coldly. Lord, no. Did you hear that? No one has entered the main hall. What are you doing? Do you want to rebel? A wisp of emperor's might spread out from Gao Wenyong's body, instantly forcing everyone to retreat. If we don't see General Yuan today, we will not retreat, even if we die. Ling Xiao took a step forward and said in a tough tone. Behind him, the generals followed closely with obvious killing intent in their eyes. Who are you? How dare you speak to me like this? If you don't retreat, I'll kill you immediately. Gao Wenyong, if you dare to kill General Yuan, aren't you afraid that the million soldiers of the northern region will exterminate your entire family? Ling Xiao was not afraid and spoke sternly. Gao Wenyong's brows were even more gloomy. Kill Yuan Fei? He wanted to, but he was not a fool. If he killed Yuan Fei here, wouldn't he become enemies with the northern region? What a joke. Yuan Fei and I are both under Lord Ning's command. We have gone through fire and water together. Why would I do such a thing? Then, Lord Gao, please open the door and let us see the general. Fine. If Yuan Fei is fine, I will punish you according to military law if you disobeyed orders. What a joke. Yuan Fei would be fine if the array was not broken. At this moment, Gao Wenyong could feel that the generals of Heavy Cloud were looking at him with mixed feelings. If he did not open the door today, it would seem that he was guilty. It would be difficult to lead the troops if they were not united. Open the door. Let General Yuan in. Gao Wenyong waved his hand, and the array outside the main hall disappeared instantly. The two divine overlords immediately turned around, opened the door, and walked in. Soon, a cry of surprise came from inside. Then, one of them rushed out in a hurry and stood in front of the crowd with an ugly expression. He did not speak for a long time. Suddenly, Gao Wenyong felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. What the F***? No way. Yuan Fei can't be, right? What's wrong? Lord, General Yuan, is dead? I think he was poisoned. What? Gao Wenyong was stunned. He turned around and looked at the generals beside him. Who is it? Who dares to poison General Yuan? Lord, you said that the array in the main hall was not broken. We all saw it with our own eyes. Who else in Heavy Cloud City could do such a thing? Ling Xiao snorted coldly. His body was surrounded by dazzling spiritual light. Behind him, countless soldiers were holding their swords. Their faces were ferocious. "You bastard! How dare you poison General Yuan? This is an irreconcilable grudge. No, it's not me. What do I gain by doing this? Someone must have set me up. With Yuan Fei's death, all his plans in the northern region would go down the drain. He even dared to poison the trusted aide of the god of war. This would prove that he had betrayed the north. At the border of the great Zhou dynasty, the emperor's authority was not as important as the god of war's faith. But how could this be? Yuan Fei killed himself just to frame me? Are you out of your mind? Gao Wenyong, I didn't expect you to be so heartless. The expressions of the generals of Heavy Cloud City, who were standing behind Gao Wenyong, changed. They stepped forward and stood in front of Gao Wenyong. At this moment, the entire Heavy Cloud City was filled with a foul smell. Chapter 428. Kill. Avenge General Yuan. Ling Xiao roared angrily and took the lead. The generals of heavenly strategies, who could not suppress their anger, took a step forward and pounced on Gao Wenyong. Do you want to rebel? Yuan Fei colluded with the enemy and was caught by me. Why can't I sentence him to death? Men, kill these traitors on the spot. Gao Wenyong suddenly shouted when he saw that he could not get rid of the blame. You can pin the blame on me, but I can't pin the blame on you? Anyway, Yuan Fei was dead. What evidence was there? However, he underestimated Yuan Fei's position in the hearts of the generals of the northern region. Even if someone betrayed the god of war and the great Zhou dynasty, it would never be Yuan Fei. His life was saved by Ningxuan. He had charged into enemy lines countless times and was trapped in deadly situations. Yuan Fei's reputation for loyalty had long been established. If he wanted to rebel, he would not have waited until now. He would not have been ordered by Emperor Zhou to guard the first pass of the great Zhou dynasty, Heavenly Strategy City. He was loyal to the death and was valued by the imperial court. This showed his loyalty. Gao Wenyong, it's really you. The generals of Heavy Cloud, who had been silent, suddenly had a fierce look in their eyes. Then, they pounced on Gao Wenyong with the crowd. You dare to rebel. You killed the general of the border pass. 9 generations of your family will be executed. Gao Wenyong's face was pale. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined that his fate would undergo such a drastic change in the short span of a single night. What happened to the promised meteoric rise and meteoric rise? How did Yuan Fei die so inexplicably? You killed a general of the northern region and betrayed the god of war. 10 generations of your family will be executed. Ling Xiao hid in the crowd, and his voice was full of anger. Spiritual light began to bloom in the air. Even the spiritual array that enveloped the heavens and earth began to ripple. Gao Wenyong's face was pale, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. However, even he could not resist the attacks of more than 10 generals of the northern region at the same time. I won't let you go. Finally, Gao Wenyong's body was surrounded by a bloody light. The array above his head turned into countless streams of light and crashed down. The dark green, poisonous fog began to spread about 10 feet away from his body, and his figure directly transformed into a bloody shadow that shot madly into the distance. When he saw this scene, the corners of Ling Xiao's mouth immediately curled up into a wisp of a smile. The divine wings of wind and lightning appeared behind him, and his figure suddenly vanished on the spot. At the same time, a powerful aura suddenly appeared in the distant void. Immediately after, all the soldiers of the great Zhou dynasty were stunned to see an iron-blooded army rushing over like a flood from the horizon. The leader was the god emperor of the great Xia, Liqua. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! The entire Heavy Cloud City was in complete chaos. Only the generals of Heavenly Strategy City had a complicated expression in their eyes. Just now, Ling Xiao had given the order to abandon the city and flee to the south. As for the guards of Chongyun City, They were Gao Wenyong's trusted subordinates. Who knew if there were spies of Emperor Zhou among them? He would rather kill the wrong person than let them go. If they wanted to blame someone, they could only blame themselves for following the wrong leader. Kill. Retreat. The troops of Heavenly Strategy City and Heavy Cloud City ran in different directions. On the other hand, Xiao Yunli and the others descended from the sky. The spiritual seals in their hands covered the sky and pressed down on Heavy Cloud City. Boom! Boundless blood chi spread out, and the entire ancient city turned into a purgatory. At this moment, 100 miles away from Heavy Cloud City, Gao Wenyong's figure appeared and landed in the mountain stream. His face was completely ferocious. At this moment, he seemed to feel that he had unknowingly fallen into someone's trap. But who exactly was it? Lord Gao, where are you going in such a hurry? Just as Gao Wenyong was muttering to himself, a cold laugh suddenly came from the ancient forest in front of him. Then, a tall figure in white walked out slowly. There was a faint smile on his handsome face. You, who exactly are you? Suddenly, Gao Wenyong's body trembled, and there seemed to be uneasiness in his eyes. Lord Gao's art of using poison is exquisite. However, you still have to die today. For a moment, Ling Xiao thought about whether he should take Gao Wenyong as his subordinate. However, this person was related to Yuan Fei's death. If he didn't kill him, he would feel uneasy. Compared to Ning Tian's, Gao Wenyong was not worth mentioning. Moreover, speaking of using poison, Ling Xiao believed that sooner or later he would meet a kind and cute girl who was born with a poisonous body. At that time, it was very exciting. Just Gao Wenyong sneered. Before he could say the words, "Just you," his face suddenly froze. Behind the young man, 2 tall puppets appeared. Although there wasn't a trace of fluctuation around them, the 2 puppets didn't move at all. Although there was no fluctuation in their aura, their ferocious and terrifying aura was somewhat oppressive. Gulp, humph, no matter who you are. Today, I will spare your life for now. I will remember this grudge. Gao Wenyong gritted his teeth and turned around to leave. However, the moment he turned around, the coldness on his face froze again. Behind him, a figure bathed in flames stood with his hands behind his back. His body was surrounded by red light, as though he was the god of fire who had descended to the world. Fourth grade divine emperor. Lord Gao, be on your way. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. The war puppet behind him turned into an afterimage and pounced toward Gao Wenyong. Outside of Hua Heng's body, resplendent flames turned into waves that covered the entire mountain stream with the momentum of covering the sky. Although Gao Wenyong was a 2nd grade divine emperor, he was proficient in formations and poison. His fighting power was not strong. Poison was naturally not a threat to puppets. The poisonous fog that filled the sky gradually dissipated under the burning flames. Gao Wenyong's figure was surrounded by the 3 puppets, and he gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. At a certain moment, when Hua Heng's palm imprinted on his chest, Gao Wenyong spat out a mouthful of blood. However, before he could struggle, he heard the sound of wind and thunder. Then, he saw in a daze that a pitch-black ancient blade had pierced through his chest. Buzz! His flesh and blood turned into ashes. Even his godly soul felt a sense of sublimation at that moment. Ling Xiao waved his hand and kept the war puppet and Hua Heng. Then he flew toward Heavy Cloud City. Boom! Even though he was far away, Ling Xiao could still see the collision of spiritual power in the sky. He smiled and Floey's figure instantly appeared under his feet. Roar! There was an earth-shattering dragon roar. The rolling demonic aura turned into dark clouds, and the sky changed color instantly. Ling Xiao held the demonic blade and rushed into the soldiers of Heavy Cloud City. He raised his blade, and there seemed to be a blood-red light meandering around his body. It turned into a blurry shadow that was ancient and boundless. The void within 10,000 miles shook instantly. One of the golden-robed figures looked coldly at the young man who was riding the dragon. There was a tinge of surprise in his eyes. You said that this young man is called Ling Xiao? That's right. I did some research. He is the successor of the eastern border's Ling people, the son-in-law of the ethereal palace, the holy son of the Danyuan Holy Land, and the former young master of the great demon sect, Ling Xiao. Qiu Qinghan nodded beside him. Although her tone was respectful, there was an inexplicable coldness in the depths of her eyes. Chapter 4:29. No wonder an emperor god bowed down to him. He is the Ling Xiao that the Lord mentioned. However, there is something wrong with the saber in his hand. The golden-robed figure frowned slightly. He seemed to be confused. The sea of stars around him turned into a divine vortex that separated his aura from the world. He was like a god. The immemorial demonic blade was the sky demon's weapon. It was an immemorial treasure. However, not many people had seen it before. Moreover, the demonic blade had lost its power. Although it was a little evil, it was at most an evil weapon. It could not be considered a forbidden weapon. My lord, should we not for now? This person is the target of that lord. We cannot touch him. However, it seems that he and Humph. Let's wait a little longer. The next time he appears, we will attack him directly. After saying that, the two figures disappeared. Ling Xiao raised his head in confusion. He looked at the sky. The demonic blade in his hand was blood-red and shone with an evil light. Below his feet, there was a sea of corpses and a river of blood. Just now, he seemed to have felt Qiu Qinghan's aura nearby. However, in the blink of an eye, she disappeared. Is the divine envoy of the sacred sect finally here? However, why didn't you look for Xiaofeng? Why did you target me directly? Have you been too arrogant recently? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. There was a playful smile at the corner of his mouth. Well, since you are here, let's take things as they come. After all, with the divine spirit of sect master Tai Xian, as long as it was not an honorable realm expert, anyone who came would die. Plop! Only when the sound of several heavy objects falling to the ground in front of him did Ling Xiao snap out of his thoughts. At that moment, the Emperor God and 3 divine kings from Heavy Cloud City had been captured by Qiao Yunli and the others. They were thrown in front of Ling Xiao. Ew. When they saw the young man who was riding the dragon, they were confused. That's not right. Why does this face look so familiar? Wait a minute. Isn't this young man the soldier from Heavenly Strategy City who was making a fuss in the crowd just now? What the F asterisk CK? Suddenly, a flash of realization appeared in everyone's eyes. However, before they could open their mouths, the demonic saber in Ling Xiao's hand suddenly slashed down and swallowed their flesh and blood. Cut off their heads and hang them on the city wall, Ling Xiao said calmly as he raised his head and looked into the distance. There were still 5 more city management officers, and the entire border would fall into the enemy's hands. With Emperor Zhou's temperament, he might not dare to let Ning Tian's return. Most likely, they would have to make some pointless struggles. However, Ling Xiao smiled sinisterly, and his figure shot out, chasing after the Heavenly Strategy City's generals. Gao and Yong was already dead. On the surface, there was no longer anyone belonging to Emperor Zhou in the northern region. In other words, the remaining 5 city passes were just decorations. As night fell, Ling Xiao sat in the 3rd stage, in the main hall of Dragon Mountain City. Below him stood a few generals. The leader was the general of Dragon Mountain City, a 2nd stage emperor god, Lei Xiong. He was 9 feet tall, with thick eyebrows and a square face. He was as strong as a tiger and a bear. At first glance, one could tell that he was a fierce general. Young master, I don't understand what you are talking about. However, since the God of War token is in your hands, I will listen to you. This morning, the Imperial Court issued a military order. Pei Qinbao has led 70,000 Golden Scale Guards to Dragon Mountain City. Young master, what should we do next? Lei Xiong held a heavy axe in his hand and said fiercely, Pei Qinbao, Golden Scale Guards? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. It sounded like Emperor Zhou's elite force. However, the Emperor of Great Zhou would never have thought that the northern region had already fallen into Ling Xiao's control. No matter how elite the Golden Scale Guards were, how could 70,000 of them fight against 1 million soldiers? Oh, it should be 800,000 now. Heavy Cloud City's generals and soldiers are all dead. Emperor Zhou, how much patience do you have left? Leave the city secretly and flee to the south. I will stay here and meet General Pei. Ling Zhao's eyes were filled with blood. The generals and soldiers of the northern region felt a chill in their hearts. Without hesitation, they led their soldiers to the fourth city gate. On the second day, there were golden-scaled guards galloping across the sky, kicking up a cloud of dust. Ling Xiao stood on the city wall with his hands behind his back. Looking at the golden-scale guards in the distance, the smile on his face grew wider. There was a spiritual array covering the sky above the city, giving off a feeling of invincibility. Is everything ready? Don't worry, young master. Everything is ready. Beside him, Li Quan nodded with a smile and hid in the dark. Great Zhou Shua's Northern Region General Pei Qinbao is here to take over the role of the Northern Region Commander. Hurry up and open the city gates to welcome His Excellency. One of the riders rushed over and stood at the foot of the city gate, roaring loudly. Oh, Lord Pei is here. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. Open the city gates and let General Pei in. Boom! The city gates opened and 70,000 golden-scaled guards filed in. Among them, there were 1 emperor, 2 kings, and 4 divine marquises. However, when everyone stepped into the city, Pei Qinbao's face turned solemn. At this moment, the streets of the Dragon Pass were empty. There was not a single person in sight. However, the array in the city was not broken. He had not heard of any battle along the way. Could it be Boom? Pei Qinbao's aura suddenly appeared. He turned into a fierce shadow and roared in the sky. The sky trembled as if a mighty force was descending. Where is Lei Xiong, the general of the Dragon Pass? Boom! The city gates were closed. Pei Qinbao's eyes finally turned gloomy. He rode on his horse and looked up at the young man on the city wall. He held the long spear in his hand, and the aura of a 4th-grade divine emperor rippled. Behind him, 70,000 golden-scaled guards drew their swords at the same time. A surge of battle intent shook the sky. Vaguely, there seemed to be a golden glow above the Dragon Pass. It was like an immortal's miracle. Although Pei Qinbao looked solemn, there was no trace of panic in his eyes. Although his cultivation was only at the 4th-grade divine emperor realm, he had cultivated a battle array that could gather the battle intent of the soldiers on himself. He could even fight against a 6th-grade divine emperor. Moreover, the 70,000 golden-scaled guards were all above the Soul Sea realm. They were the most elite troops of the Great Zhou dynasty. Even if he fell into the trap, he was confident that he could break out of the encirclement and behead the enemy. General Lei asked me to pass a message to all of you. On the city wall, Ling Zhao's eyes were clear, and there was a hint of a smile on his face. I wish all of you a smooth journey to the netherworld. Arrogant, leave your name. I, Pei Qinbao, will not kill a nameless person. Pei Qinbao shouted angrily. He stood on his horse, and spiritual light was emitting from his body, causing the space to ripple. However, there was a hint of doubt in his eyes. Although the young man in front of him looked like a celestial being, it was as if he had transformed into a world. However, his cultivation, Great Xia dynasty's divine ancestor, Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao said indifferently. Pei Qinbao threw the long spear in his hand. It turned into a ray of light and pierced through the sky, arriving in front of Ling Xiao in an instant. However, the young man did not move at all. There was no change in his expression. A figure appeared in the sky. He was a 6th-grade divine emperor, and he grabbed Pei Qinbao's long spear with his palm. Xiao Yunli, it's you. The heavens and earth were oppressive. Countless black-armored soldiers walked out of the city walls one after another. They drew the spirit bows in their hands and aimed at the countless golden guards below. I never thought that the Great Xia dynasty's imperial advisor would use such a despicable method. Despicable? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. A hint of sarcasm flashed in his eyes. Only the winner will have the imperial mandate. Arrows fell from the sky like rain, sending chills down everyone's spines. Rays of light streaked across the sky and fell on the 70,000 golden-scaled guards. At the same time, the spiritual array above the dragon pass was activated. There seemed to be a dragon's roar that shook the clouds. Chapter 430. Kill. Pei Qingbao's eyes were bloodshot. When he sensed the spiritual energy in the arrows, he could not help but feel aggrieved. If they were to fight head-on, he would not be afraid, even if there were 200,000 soldiers. However, the enemy was above him, and the golden scale guards were below him. The arrows pierced through the void and landed on the ground. Blood splattered everywhere, and thousands of soldiers were killed in an instant. So what if they had Soul Sea combat strength? The people who drew the arrows were the elites of the Great Xia dynasty who were handpicked by Ling Xiao. Pei Qingbao alone would not be able to withstand the attacks of 100,000 soldiers. Damn it, divine kings, follow me and break the array. Pei Qingbao's eyes were bloodshot. He took a step forward and charged towards the spiritual array. If the spiritual array was not broken, they would be at the mercy of the enemy. However, the moment he appeared in the air, Qiao Yunli's face was filled with sarcasm. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Pei Qingbao. Pei Qingbao alone was no longer a threat. On the other hand, Ling Zhao's primordial demon blade shone brightly and slashed at the enemy. Spiritual mountains and seas started to fall from the sky. It was as if the end of the world was coming. Boom! Ling Xiao took a step forward and appeared in the midst of the golden-scaled guards. Two puppet fighters followed closely behind him and blocked the attacks from behind. Kill! Li Kuo shouted coldly as he blocked the two god kings. The originally ferocious golden guards of the Great Zhou dynasty were instantly defeated. The 70,000 golden scale guards were armed with long halberds which were supposed to be lethal weapons. However, since they were trapped in the city, they could not wield their halberds. Instead, they injured many of the golden scale guards. At this moment, Ling Zhao's primordial demon blade cut off limbs and bodies wherever it passed. The smell of blood filled the air and dyed the sky red. In Ling Zhao's eyes, the group of mystic pure and illusion breaker cultivators were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Every time he attacked, hundreds of lives would be taken. Damn it! In the air, Pei Qinbao's eyes were filled with despair. Especially at this moment, he didn't even have a chance to retaliate against Qiao Yunli. At this moment, Pei Qingbao finally understood the sorrow of the ancient people. The massacre did not stop, and the entire Dragon Mountain city instantly turned into a blood prison. Bastard! Stop! A divine marquis of Great Zhou tore through the air and appeared in front of Ling Xiao, trying to stop him. However, before the divine overlord could land on the ground, the golden armored puppet smashed the divine overlord's divine hammer into a meat patty on the ground. Qiao Yunli, I'll kill you. Pei Qingbao raised his head and let out a roar. Then, he channeled all of his spiritual energy into his palm and threw a punch at Qiao Yunli. The spirit palm illuminated the sky and covered the world. Divine might overflowed from it. Symbols swirled about, transforming into a peerless, ferocious beast that tore through the sky. Qiao Yunli coldly snorted. Beside him, Li Kuo's eyes also flashed with coldness. The two of them attacked at the same time. One hand seal and the other blade shattered the void. The blade was swept across the world. The 100 feet spiritual seal rumbled and crushed the area around Pei Qingbao. In a blink of an eye, Pei Qingbao's ferocious beast attack was shattered. Pei Qingbao's body was smashed down from the sky by the blade aura, shattering all of his bones. Gulp! Suddenly, despair flashed in the eyes of the Golden Guards. Then, they turned around and ran toward the city. No one had expected that the most elite army of the Great Zhou dynasty would be annihilated on the first day of their arrival in the northern region. Ling Xiao stood at the foot of the city with his hands behind his back. He looked at Pei Qingbao's body that was falling from the sky. The lightning wings on his back flashed, and a black moon rose in his eyes. Pei Qingbao, who had been severely injured, did not even have time to react before he was plunged into darkness. Where is this? Above his head, The sky was blood red, and a black moon rose slowly. Pei Qinbao's face contorted in fear, as if he had seen the evilest thing in the world. Then despair filled his face. Crack! Crack! My lord, the remaining golden guards, Li Kuo and Xiao Yunli stood beside Ling Xiao. Their eyes narrowed as they looked at the countless golden armored figures scattered across the city. Longyun City was neither big nor small. There were only a few thousand golden guards left. Hiding in the city was like throwing a stone into the sea. It would be difficult to find them in a short time. They're just deceiving themselves. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He lifted Pei Qinbao's head and threw it to Li Kuo. Hang it on the great Xia dynasty's war flag. Set out and attack the next city pass. Yes. As the army set out, the entire Longyun city fell silent. However, what was terrifying was that there was not a single trace of blood or corpse in the city despite the massacre of nearly 70,000 soldiers. It was ridiculous. Could it be that everything just now was just an illusion? Or was it an illusion? However, before the crowd could figure out what was going on, the entire city suddenly began to shake. After that, everyone was stunned to see that their bodies seemed to be pushed up by something. Below their feet, divine trees that were hundreds of meters long formed a formation. They lifted the entire Longyun city and smashed it toward the spiritual formation in the air. Boom! The moment the two forces collided, heaven and earth were overturned and broken rocks fell. The few thousand golden guards who were lucky enough to survive were finally unable to escape the misfortune and were crushed into meat paste. Outside Longyun City, 50 kilometers away, Li Kuo and the others turned around to look at the collapsing city, their eyes filled with shock. However, when they saw the calm face of the young man in front of them, they suddenly had some guesses. Gulp! From the beginning to the end, they did not know the origin of this young lord. However, his methods and temperament inexplicably made them feel awe and even fear. For 7 days in a row, 7 city passes in the Great Zhou dynasty's northern border were broken. The last pass, Pingyang City, stood alone in the hinterland of the Great Zhou dynasty. Once this pass was broken, the Great Zhou dynasty would no longer be able to resist the Great Xia dynasty's cavalry. The million soldiers in the northern border were now gathered in one city. However, no one dared to lead the troops against the enemy. The first 7 passes were all broken. Even the cities were uprooted by the Great Xia dynasty's powerful cultivators. What was even more frightening and infuriating was that the 70,000 elite golden scale guards of the Great Zhou dynasty, along with the North General Shua Bei, the 4th grade divine Emperor Pei Qinbao, disappeared like mud flowing into the sea. Even their bones were not found. The entire Yunfang city was in chaos. The Great Zhou dynasty's hundreds of years of inheritance seemed to have come to an end. Emperor Zhou sat on the throne and looked down coldly at the officials below. The emperor's aura around him surged, but his face was inexplicably pale. Originally, he thought that with the million soldiers in the northern border, how could they not resist the 200,000 cavalry of the Great Xia dynasty? However, the hearts of the generals in the northern border were shaken. They no longer had any courage. The 7 passes were broken and hundreds of thousands of soldiers were killed or injured. This loss to the Great Zhou Empire could be considered a calamity. Emperor, we can't hesitate any longer. Once Pingyang Pass is broken, the Great Zhou dynasty will be in danger. There were loyal officials in the palace with tears streaming down their faces. Everyone knew that Ning Tiance was trapped in the imperial capital. It couldn't be helped. Even if this war god of the north was devoted to the Great Zhou dynasty, no one dared to speak up for him. After all, everyone knew about the emperor's intentions. But now, the Great Zhou dynasty was overthrown in a single night. No matter what merits or threats, they were not worth mentioning. If he didn't make a decision, the Great Zhou dynasty would be completely destroyed. Emperor, shut up. Who dares to lead the army against the Great Xia dynasty? Emperor Zhou gritted his teeth. When he opened his eyes, golden light burst out. The Xianhua Holy Palace was filled with endless majesty. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the officials who were originally enraged all fell silent one after another. What kind of joke was this? Even the North General Shuo Bei, Pei Qinbao, couldn't resist the great Xia dynasty. 70,000 golden scale guards fell in a single day. Should we go? Send them to their deaths? Damn, Emperor. Now, I'm afraid you can only lead the army. Chapter 431. Old Prime Minister, you're wrong. You're the Emperor. If you go to the north, who will guard Yinfang City? Besides, the north looks dangerous now, but we're just short of a general. In the Golden Palace, a middle-aged man with a dignified expression took a step forward and bowed to Emperor Zhou. Emperor, I think we should send Ning Tiance back to the north to quell the war. Ning Tiance? Yes, he's the commander of the north. He has a supreme position in the hearts of the soldiers. Send him to lead the army and solve the problem. Immediately, someone in the hall voiced their agreement. Oh, supreme? Emperor Zhou nodded. Take him out and execute his 9 generations. Emperor, Zhou Qingcang, you're ridiculous. You're too narrow-minded. Great Zhou is doomed. The entire Golden Hall fell into a dead silence. All the courtiers had a complicated look on their faces. They had no choice but to let the tiger return to the mountain. Even if Ning Tiance had the army, it was still better than breaking the 8 gates in the north and opening the imperial gates. Moreover, the north was a place of great importance. It was a place that the military must guard. Once the 8 gates were broken, who could guarantee that Great Qin and Great Qi would not take advantage of the situation and conquer the world? Now, does anyone still think Ning Tiance should go to the north? Emperor Zhou's expression did not change. He looked down at the hall. Hearing this, no one dared to say anything. They did not even dare to look at him. Emperor, I've worked hard for Great Zhou all my life. Now, I'm at the end of my life. Even if you don't want to, I still want to say that Ning Tiance going to the north to lead the army is the best solution for Great Zhou. Imperial Emperor, feel free to take this old subject's life. I only ask that Imperial Emperor think twice. Be careful. In front of the courtiers, the white-haired old Prime Minister of Great Zhou walked to the front and knelt on the ground respectfully. He took off his official hat and did not get up for a long time. Old Prime Minister, you. Emperor Zhou's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward and helped the old Prime Minister up from the ground. How could he not know that Ning Tiance was forced to return to the north? It was what everyone wanted. The reason why he had killed the officials earlier was to test if any of them had ulterior motives. Now that the old Prime Minister had guaranteed with his life, it seemed that Ning Tiance's return was imminent. Men, invite Ning Tiance into the palace. Yes. Great Zhou Imperial Palace, Imperial Study. Emperor Zhou stood in front of the window with his hands clasped behind his back, looking into the distance. Behind him, Emperor's fate manifested in the void. Dragons and clouds followed him, eternal and indestructible. To be honest, Emperor Zhou had never imagined that the situation in the north would develop to such a state. Everyone in Xizjiang knew about the turmoil in Great Xia. The unforeseen event 10 years ago caused this empire's vitality to be greatly damaged, and a number of Emperor God experts fell. Who would have thought that Xia Sheng would have the guts to attack Zhou at this time? Of course, even if the border city was breached, Emperor Zhou still did not panic. The north had 1 million soldiers, while Great Xia only sent out 200,000. Although Imperial Tutor Qiao Yunli was leading the troops, it was clear that they only had the advantage of catching the enemy off guard. Once Ning Tiance returned, Great Xia would definitely be defeated. What worried Emperor Zhou the most was that Ning Tiance had been trapped in the imperial capital for more than 10 years. When Zhou Minyao was still alive, he still had some concerns in his heart. Now that he was alone, what else could restrain him? Moreover, the 70,000 golden scale guards, were they killed by someone? Or was there a traitor in the imperial court? When he tried to probe, just now, he did not find any clues. As for the old prime minister who was past his prime, it was even more impossible for him to be disloyal. What exactly went wrong? Sigh. In the end, Emperor Zhou still felt a trace of regret in his heart. If he had known this would happen, he would not have spent so much effort to transfer Ning Tiance back to the imperial capital, causing the emperor and his ministers to be at odds with each other. Emperor, are you worried about Ning Tiance? Beside him, Chu Dahai asked in a deep voice. Letting the tiger return to the mountain will cause endless trouble in the future. Emperor Zhou shook his head and smiled bitterly. Chu Dahai bowed slightly. If you are still worried, I am willing to follow General Ning to the north. Emperor Zhou raised his eyebrows slightly and nodded his head after a long while. With Chu Dahai's cultivation as a fifth-grade divine emperor, if he really wanted to kill Ning Tiance, it would not be too difficult for him to do so. If Ning Tiance really had the intention to rebel, Chu Dahai killing him would be his personal action and would not be related to the imperial court. Then it would not cause any rumors. All right, you will follow Ning Tiance back to the north as the military governor. After the war is over, escort him back to the imperial capital. At that time, I will send someone to take charge of the military power in the north. Yes, Emperor, Ning Tiance has arrived. Invite him in. Emperor Zhou turned around and looked out of the palace. The gloominess on his face had already disappeared and was replaced by a gentle smile. Tiance, Emperor. Ning Tiance was dressed in white. He stood tall and straight, and there was a murderous aura circulating in his every movement. At this moment, there was no trace of joy on his face, nor was there any fluctuation. Even though he had already guessed the reason why Emperor Zhou summoned him to the palace. But, Brother Xiao, I did not expect you to do it. No matter what means Ling Xiao had used, in just a month's time, he had brought tens of thousands of soldiers to help him return to the north. Such a strategy was shocking. Tiance, I know that Minmin's unexpected death has exhausted you mentally and physically. Now the opportunity is here. The true demon that appeared in the imperial capital that day is a member of the imperial family of Great Xia. Now, I want you to return to the north and lead the army against Great Xia. Are you willing to do so? Emperor Zhou took a deep breath, and his face was slightly solemn. I dare not disobey your order. However, at this moment, Ning Tiance's face was still calm and indifferent. Good. I order you to be the commander of Great Zhou's army and head to the north immediately to fight against Great Xia. I order Chu Dahai to be the military governor to fight against Great Xia's imperial preceptor, Qiao Yunli. If the two of you work together, Great Xia will be destroyed. Yes, Ning Tiance nodded, but he sneered in his heart. Chu Dahai, you're just a slave. When we reach the north, I will let you know what destiny is. Emperor Zhou waited until the two of them were far away before he lifted his foot and walked towards the depths of the palace. There was a vague aura there. Great Zhou was one of the four upper dynasties. Its foundation was naturally not something that Great Xia could compare with. In terms of foundation, even Great Qin was no match for it. Only Great Yuan Empire, the head of the 8 dynasties, was stronger than Great Zhou. Great Xia was invading Ning Tiance? Those who offend Great Zhou must be killed. At the same time, in Great Qin's palace, a beautiful figure in red sat quietly in the golden palace. Her beautiful face was filled with coldness and majesty. The woman was wearing a red robe with a golden dragon embroidered on it, revealing a domineering aura. Her beautiful face was pale and sickly, filled with a kind of world-weary laziness. Moreover, the most shocking thing was that the woman's hair was actually snow white. Even her pair of long and narrow beautiful eyes were mixed with a wisp of gray, demonic and charming. Emperor, at this moment, a maid in black stood in front of the palace. She had delicate eyebrows and was hesitating. You're saying that Great Xia's army has broken through the 7 stages? Yes. Now that the million-strong army in the north has entered Pingyang City, it is said that Emperor Zhou has sent Ning Tiance back to the north to lead the army. Ning Tiance has returned to the north. The white-haired empress looked indifferent. She seemed to be pondering. Previously, Emperor Zhou had sent a letter to borrow the army to attack Great Xia. Now, It seemed that Great Zhou's war god had returned to the north and should be able to contend with Great Xia's state preceptor. However, she did not know why, but she felt that something was wrong. Xiao Bei went to Great Xia before the war. Yes, Emperor, it is said that General Xiao led the two envoys from Blood Dragon Hall to Great Xia half a month ago. However, they returned the next day. Haha, it seems that my cousin is still alive. The white-haired empress stood up. A cold, murderous intent flashed across her eyes. Chapter 432. Celestial Emperor. You mean? The female attendant's pretty face froze, and she looked a little confused. Cousin? Didn't the Celestial Emperor only have one cousin? Where did this cousin come from? After Xiao Beifa returned to the imperial court, he took charge of the Great Qin Blood Dragon Guards. I guess that it should be a backup plan set up by the previous emperor. Back then, Prince Yu's whereabouts were unknown. He should have been secretly sent out of the Great Qin dynasty. The white-haired empress was naturally the current Great Qin Emperor, Qin Wushuang. The cousin he mentioned was originally River Yu. He had probably changed his appearance and name. The female attendant immediately understood Qin Wushuang's meaning. Xiao Beifa was loyal to the previous emperor. The Blood Dragon Guards were the most elite army of the Great Qin dynasty. Although there were only 10,000 of them, they were all powerful and above the Paong realm. They were the most loyal guards of the Great Qin dynasty. Back then, Xiao Beifa led the troops back to the imperial court and killed the rebels. He also took over the Blood Dragon Guards and became the current commander of the Blood Dragon Guards. Although on the surface, the Great Qin dynasty belonged to Qin Wushuang, all the officials knew that all these years, Xiao Beifa had been using his forces to search for one person. It was the missing Prince Yu, the Great Qin dynasty's young emperor. Once this person returned to the imperial court, Qin Wushuang would not be able to keep his throne. Wupu, I promised you that I would let you become an emperor respected by tens of thousands of people. I will help you conquer the western border and let you start a great undertaking and inherit the fortune of the heavens and earth. At that time, with the wishes of all living beings, I might be able to cure your soul disease. Suddenly, a cold light flashed across Qin Wushuang's eyes. There seemed to be ghost howls around him, and it was extremely cold. Pass down my orders. Order 10,000 Blood Dragon Guards to be on standby in front of the palace. Protector General Xiao Beifa will guard the imperial city. I will personally lead the Blood Dragon Guards to reinforce the Great Zhou. Yes, Celestial Emperor. Qin Wushuang raised his foot, and 10,000 ghosts followed behind him. It was strange and unpredictable. Great Xia, I don't know about Prince Yu or Prince Yu. I will kill them all and save you from trouble. Great Zhou's northern border, Pingyang City Pass. This pass was the last pass of the Great Zhou's 8 passes. At this moment, in front of the main hall in the city, a group of northern generals stood quietly. In front of everyone, Ling Xiao looked up at the sky with an indifferent gaze. Before this, news came from the imperial court that the Great Zhou Emperor ordered Ning Tiance to take over as the commander of the Great Zhou army and rush to the north to defend against the enemy. With Ning Tiance's strength, he could travel 10,000 miles in one day. 800,000 northern region soldiers were gathered in Pingyang City. However, what was strange was that, at this moment, there was not a trace of dejection on their faces. Instead, there was a faint trace of excitement. After 10 years, the war god of the north was finally returning. However, what puzzled the soldiers was the fact that all the great god emperor generals in the north were standing. Who was the handsome young man who was leaning against the golden chair in front of the hall, dressed in white robes and drinking wine from a glazed cup? Judging from his appearance, he seemed to be less than 20 years old. Everyone had lived to this age. Why was he so awesome? A god emperor bowed? Buzz. Until an ear-piercing, buzzing sound came from the horizon, and 2 figures walked side by side from the distant mountain. At this moment, the entire Pingyang city was in an uproar. Countless soldiers raised their heads and looked at the white-robed figure with tears in their eyes. 10 years. Oh my God, it's you. you're finally back. Welcome back to the north, war god. Boom, boom. The 800,000 iron-blooded soldiers all knelt on one knee. The deafening clamor almost overturned the sky. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed. He could not help but sigh in his heart. What was the hope of the masses? 10 years of life and death, and the belief did not change. What was the return? Only one person was waiting for the devastation. Even though Ning Tiance had been gone for 10 years at this moment, he was still the war god of the north. As long as he was there, the north would be united. Even some of the spies of the great Zhou emperor were frightened by his unparalleled dominance. Their faces turned pale and their bodies swayed. There were even some people who directly vomited blood and died from fright among the crowd. At this moment, Ning Tiance's handsome and determined face was also somewhat emotional. 10 years. Finally, he returned to the land he once loved. Even though this place was chaotic and bloody, only this place could be said to be the home of his soul. Are you all hot-blooded? Haha, War God Ning is indeed worthy of his name. Once he returned, he gathered the hearts of the 800,000 soldiers in the north. Chu Dahai smiled eerily. However, his eyes were intentionally looking at the only person sitting in front of the main hall. That was a youth who was incomparably handsome. He was more imposing than any crown prince or ancient sex inheritor he had ever seen. He was indifferent and could control the world. At this moment, although he was smiling, he revealed a kind of supreme dominance. It was as if the 800,000 soldiers in the north were just dust in front of him. Even Ning Tiance, who was originally blessed by the heavens, seemed to be insignificant and dim in comparison. But when did the great Zhou dynasty have such a peerless young master? Inexplicably, Chu Dahai suddenly felt a trace of coldness in his heart. Haha, you're flattering me. Ning Tiance smiled indifferently. He stepped forward and landed in the air. Then, under the dumbfounded gazes of the 800,000 soldiers in the north, he bowed deeply to the young man in white. Brother Xiao, brother, what are you doing? Ling Xiao quickly helped Ning Tiance up. They looked at each other, and everything was understood without words. Haha, war god, aren't you going to introduce him to me? Chu Dahai followed closely and sized up Ling Xiao. At this moment, a trace of surprise flashed in the latter's eyes. The corner of his mouth curved into an extremely sinister smile. Gulp. Chu Dahai's body tensed up. F***CK. Although he's not a man, he's not a woman either. Does this young master have some kind of special fetish? Eunuch Chu, this is my sworn younger brother. He's also the elder brother of my daughter. Chu Dahai frowned and pondered for a long time. Is there a difference in seniority? Haha, your brother doesn't look ordinary. May I know, how should I address you? However, in the end, he only sneered. His eyes were inexplicably gloomy. How could Ning Tiance's sworn younger brother appear in the army so coincidentally? Moreover, everyone in the imperial court didn't seem to know that he had a sworn younger brother. Haha, I'm a great Xia dynasty's divine ancestor, Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao's tone was calm. However, his words instantly caused the entire Pingyang city to fall into a dead silence. This was especially so for Chu Dahai. His old face suddenly froze. The great Xia dynasty's divine ancestor. Asterisk, this is it's very sudden. Chu Dahai finally understood why Ning Tiance didn't ask about the situation in the north or the number of enemies along the way. He hasn't led an army for 10 years. Now that he's fighting the enemy, he doesn't care about the military situation. It turns out they're family. Chapter 433. Commander Ning, what's going on here? Chu Dahai looked around blankly. Only now did he realize that apart from the ordinary soldiers, even the generals of the northern region looked calm. There was even a hint of mockery in their eyes when they looked at him. Generals, are you willing to conquer the world with me? Ning Tiance shouted coldly. Instantly, the quiet Pingyang city was shaken. The 800,000 soldiers raised their swords and spears and shouted loudly. We are willing to conquer the world with the god of war. Conquer the world, where the god of war commands, not even a blade of grass will grow. Countless hot-blooded shouts stirred up the wind and clouds. Heaven and earth lost their color, and the whole city was shaken. Even the spies that Emperor Zhou planted in the army felt their blood boiling. Their shameful identities seemed to have broken through the shackles and gained a new life. Following Ning Tiance to make a name for himself seemed to be much better than being a spy in the army. The place he would return to was a bloody battlefield. Why would he be a spy? He did not deserve to have a name. Even if he succeeded, he would not be able to escape the fate of being killed by the imperial court. He might as well follow Ning Tiance and rebel. Ning Tiance, you want to rebel? Chu Dahai's body trembled and his eyes widened. Damn it, it felt like he had walked right into a trap. Even if it was. His cultivation had reached the 5th stage, but in front of Ning Tiance and the god emperors of the northern region, he still did not have much room to resist, especially this god of war of the northern region. It was said that he had mastered an immortal technique that could gather the fighting spirit of the generals and launch a shocking attack. He had not tasted defeat in the past 10 years. He, Chu Dahai, was a eunuch, a servant, and a lackey. He was good at serving Emperor Zhou and scaring ordinary officials. However, in front of such an iron-blooded army, he was not even a man. For a moment, Chu Dahai seemed to want to raise his hands and shout that he was willing to follow the god of war and conquer the world. But it did not seem possible. Looking at Ning Tiance's eyes, it seemed like he wanted to kill him. Damn, he was too careless. Originally, Chu Dahai was here to supervise Ning Tiance's army. Although this war god had been trapped for 10 years, he definitely had some resentment in his heart. But, after all, they had not met for 10 years. No matter how high his prestige was, if he wanted to rebel against the imperial court, he would have to first establish a relationship with the generals of the northern region and come up with a plan. And Chu Dahai's role was to kill Ning Tiance when he showed signs of this. However, who would have thought that the moment his mother arrived at the northern region, she would rebel before she even had a sip of tea? Eunuch Zhu, thank you for accompanying me all the way to the northern region. Now, shall I send you off as well? Ning Tiance smiled faintly. He clenched his fist, and a green saber appeared in his hand. The void trembled, and Tao laws faintly appeared between heaven and earth. The extravagant celestial music resounded, and the 800,000 soldiers felt their blood boil. The fighting spirit in their hearts surged uncontrollably. The Tao law of Yanbing was indeed miraculous. Ling Xiao glanced at the furious generals in the distance. Only now did he understand what it meant to be a war god. And why did the generals of the northern region follow Ning Tiance so loyally? Other than Ning Tiance's character and combat strength, the Tao law of Yanbing was also an important reason, gathering the soldiers' morale and fighting spirit. These soldiers might not be loyal, but they could not control their blood in front of Ning Tiance. No need. We're God, Ning. I know the way. I can go back myself. Chu Dahai bowed and turned to leave with an indifferent expression. Seeing this, not only was Ning Tiance stunned, but even Ling Xiao could not help but raise his eyebrows slightly. This old thing is quite discerning. But do you think we will really not care about you if you pretend not to care? Childish. Haha. Eunuch Zhu, the way I'm talking about is not the way back to the imperial capital. It is the way to the western paradise. Ning Tiance sneered and slashed with his saber. The sound of a dragon's roar resounded through the sky. In the distance, the 4 generals of the northern region stepped forward at the same time and surrounded Chu Dahai, cutting off his escape route. Ning Tiance, how dare you? Wait a minute. Just as Chu Dahai was panicking and instinctively channeling his spiritual energy, Ling Xiao, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said with a smile, Brother Xiao? Ning Tiance stopped and looked at Ling Xiao in confusion. Brother Xiao, you may not know this, but Chu Dahai is Emperor Zhou's personal attendant. He is loyal and devoted. Once he is released, there will be many unforeseen events. Emperor Zhou's personal attendant? Loyal and devoted? I don't think so. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He looked at the pale Chu Dahai playfully. Dahai, I can release you, but do you know what you have to do? You want me to kill the emperor? Don't even think about it. Chu Dahai's expression changed, and there was panic in his eyes. Although Ning Tiance was strong, as Emperor Zhou's most trusted attendant, he knew some secrets that ordinary people did not know. In the great Zhou imperial palace, there was an extremely terrifying existence. Although Emperor Zhou was the emperor of Great Zhou, the one who decided the fate of Great Zhou was that person. An army of 800,000 was indeed terrifying. However, in front of absolute strength, it did not seem to be of much use. There were a total of 4 God Emperors in the northern region, and they were all at the first or second stage of the God Emperor realm. Even if Ning Tiance colluded with Great Xia, the strongest one was only Qiao Yunli. However, with that person's strength, even if all of them worked together, they would not be his match. It was not that he was loyal and devoted. It was just that he did not dare to attack Emperor Zhou. Oh, Hai San, are you sure? However, just as Chu Dahai was muttering to himself, the corners of Ling Zhao's mouth curled up slightly. Hai San? Who was Hai San? Could it be that Brother Xiao and Chu Dahai knew each other? All of a sudden, Chu Dahai, Ning Tiance, and the others were dumbfounded. You are. This was especially so for Chu Dahai. His eyes suddenly widened as he looked at Ling Xiao with a gaze that seemed to contain boundless shock and fear. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Open your mind, and I will give you a contact imprint. Ling Xiao sneered. However, Chu Dahai did not dare to hesitate and opened his mind. However, just as Ling Xiao separated a strand of his divine soul and wanted to plant a soul imprint, his expression changed. At this moment, Chu Dahai's soul seemed to have been sealed by someone with a mysterious method. Once touched, he would die immediately. As expected of the Temple of Blood Soul. They were indeed meticulous. Ling Zhao's eyes flashed with a hint of gloominess, but his expression remained calm. Forget it. If I leave a soul imprint, Emperor Zhou will notice it. Just go back and say that Ning Tiance betrayed you and you escaped by luck. When we attack Yinfang City, you will act according to my wishes. Yes, sir. Chu Dahai bowed and looked at Ling Xiao deeply. All right, sir. There should be a hidden expert in the Great Zhou dynasty's palace. His cultivation is terrifying. Oh, I know. Go. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. Terrifying? Was he as terrifying as Sect Master Taishian? Damn. Chapter 434. Brother Xiao. Ning Tiance only looked at Ling Xiao in confusion after Chu Dahai left. He did not understand why Chu Dahai would bow down to Ling Xiao after hearing his name. Could it be Brother Xiao's unique charisma? That seems to be the case. Even I was shocked when I saw little Brother Xiao. What Ning Tiance did not know was that there was a reason why Ling Xiao chose to attack the great Zhou Empire. There was a spy from the Blood Soul Temple beside Emperor Zhou. Only the Holy Lord of the Blood Soul Temple and Elder Qi, who was in charge of assigning missions, knew about it. However, unfortunately, Elder Qi was Ling Zhao's slave now. Chu Dahai's code name in the Blood Hall was Hai San. Even his father did not know this name, let alone outsiders. Therefore, when Ling Xiao called him Hai San, Chu Dahai understood. The great Xia divine ancestor was a high-ranking person in the Blood Hall. It was just that as a spy, he couldn't understand how good it was. F***CK. Holy Lord, I thought you had forgotten about me. If you did not send anyone here, I would have reached the peak of the Emperor God level and become the master. The Blood Soul Temple was the most mysterious force in the Shengzhou other than the Holy Church. Its hierarchy was extremely strict. If Bai Ling did not appear to avenge her brother, Ling Xiao would not have been able to open this gap so easily. Other than the Blood Hall Holy Lord's personal disciples and the elders of the Blood Hall, the other spies in the 4 borders of the Shengzhou had left their life tokens in the Blood Hall. Therefore, this was the reason for their absolute loyalty. Although Chu Dahai did not know Ling Zhao's identity, he was a level 5 Emperor God. Only a few of the higher-ups would know his code name. As for why he was asked to go back and report to Emperor Zhou that Ning Tian had rebelled, of course, it was to let Emperor Zhou prepare in advance and gather the soldiers. This way, Ling Zhao's saber would not be unbearable. Brother, don't worry. Dahai is one of us. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and did not explain too much. Ning Tian's only nodded. Based on his understanding of Ling Xiao, the latter would never do anything that he wasn't confident in. If that was the case, Chu Dahai was hiding beside Emperor Zhou. The great Zhou dynasty could be plotted. Little brother Xiao, where's Ning, A touch of gentleness suddenly flashed in Ning Tian's eyes, while Ling Xiao patted his shoulder with a smile. The two of them walked side by side toward the main hall in the city. Generals, rest for a day. Tomorrow morning, we will depart for Cloud Fong City. Ning Tian's waved his hand, and the 800,000 soldiers behind him shouted, "Yes, we're God." Ling Xiao didn't summon Ning, and Yi Qingchuan from his realm until they entered the hall. This is... Ning Tian's narrowed his eyes and looked at Yi Qingchuan, who was holding Ning hand with surprise. Big brother, this is Qingchuan. She's one of us. Oh, a hint of playfulness flashed in Ning Tian's eyes. The beauty of the woman in front of him was indeed worthy of his sworn brother. No, it should be said that all the beauties in the world should admire a dragon among men like his sworn brother. It was their honor to be chosen by little brother Xiao. Ning Fa. Father. Ning face flushed with shyness, and she unconsciously hid behind Ling Xiao. Big brother, you accompany Ning well. I will return to the great Xiao barracks first. Tomorrow morning, we will go to Cloud Fong City together. Ling Xiao gave Yi Qingchuan a look, and the latter immediately smiled and nodded. Ning be good here. Big sister will come and pick you up tomorrow. Big brother Ling Xiao. Big sister Qingchuan. Ning eyes were obviously reluctant to leave, but Ling Xiao only smiled and rubbed her little head. Have you forgotten what I said? Your father is a great hero. He will tell you many stories. Oh, then come earlier tomorrow. In the end, Ning pouted and reluctantly watched Ling Xiao and Yi Qingchuan walk away. Then, she looked at Ning Tian's curiously. Young master. Yi Qingchuan reached out and held Ling Zhao's arm, and her pretty face suddenly flushed. It wasn't easy to get rid of Ning, that little burden, so he had to cherish this day. It was quite sudden that Yi Qingchuan did not seem to want to have children anymore. Let's return to the barracks first, and then return to the territory to accompany you to cultivate. Ling Xiao smiled faintly, held Yi Qingchuan's hand, and flew toward the horizon. But just as the two of them were far away, two figures suddenly appeared in the sky above Pingyang City. Sir, they appeared. Yes, let's go. It's time to reel in the net. Ling Xiao and Yi Qingchuan walked over between the high mountains and steep ridges. For some reason, Ling Xiao suddenly felt a faint sense of uneasiness. Or rather, ever since he entered the great Zhou dynasty's northern region, he had always felt that Xiao Qinghan was nearby. Young master, what's wrong? Yi Qingchuan seemed to have felt the coldness emitted from Ling Zhao's body, and she frowned slightly. Coldness circulated in her eyes, and even the ancient forest beneath her was instantly frozen. Since you've been following me all the way, why don't you come out and say hello? Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back, blocking in front of Yi Qingchuan. At this moment, he did not feel any aura around him, but he instinctively felt a little uneasy. If someone could really block his divine sense in front of him, then that person's cultivation level must be extremely terrifying. Divine envoy of the Saint Sect? You're finally here. Buzz. As Ling Zhao's voice fell, a spiritual screen suddenly appeared in the sky, enveloping the entire mountain. Then, an old man in a golden robe slowly appeared. An earth-shattering power covered 1,000 miles of the sky. He stood there, as if a huge mountain had descended, causing people to instinctively feel an endless pressure. Beside him was the young girl Ling Xiao had seen in Dragon Fortune City, Xiao Qinghan. It's really you. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed, and Dao laws appeared around him. Eighth grade divine emperor. No wonder he could perfectly conceal himself. He did not expect an eighth grade divine emperor to come. Ling Xiao did not need to think to guess the identity of this golden-robed old man, the divine envoy of the Saint sect. From the looks of it, the 4 divine envoys had gone to the 4 borders. Didn't it mean that the Saint sect had 4 eighth-grade divine emperors and above? It was no wonder that the Saint sect could rule the Shenzhou for thousands of years. Such combat power was indeed not something that ordinary forces could contend against. This grade 8 expert alone could easily destroy a supreme Taoism orthodoxy in an inheritance dynasty. However, what went wrong? Why did the divine envoy of the Saint sect target him? You're quite cautious. The golden-robed old man sneered, and golden light shone in his eyes. It was as if divine palaces had appeared and been destroyed. It could be said to be miraculous. Other than sect master Tai Xian, this person was the strongest person Ling Xiao had ever seen. However, at this moment, there was not a trace of panic in the latter's heart. Sect Master Taishuan's spiritual incarnation was enough to easily crush any expert below the venerable realm. He was just curious about what he had done wrong to attract the Saint sect's suspicion. Give up. Before you fully awaken, you won't be able to escape from my grasp. The golden-robed old man clenched his fist, and the entire world instantly collapsed and shattered. Rays of spiritual light fell like the Milky Way, falling on Ling Xiao and Qiu Qinghan. Ling Zhao's expression changed, and he finally stopped hesitating. He grabbed Yi Qingchan's jade-like hand and put her, along with the golden-robed old man and Qiu Qinghan, into the realm. Looking at the suddenly changing void in front of him, the golden-robed old man hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he only sneered and did not use his spiritual power to stop it. He wanted to see what kind of storm a mere 17-year-old youth could stir up under his nose. Also, what ability did he have to make the strongest person in the Saint sect, other than the Divine Master, personally target him? So, how did you see through my identity? In the realm, Dao laws evolved around Ling Zhao's body, and endless strange phenomena appeared. There seemed to be gods and demons falling, and the sun setting in the west. At this moment, the golden-robed old man frowned slightly. Identity? What identity? Chapter 435. Seeing the confusion on the divine envoy's face, Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes. He suddenly had a bad feeling. You are not here for me. This demonic aura. The golden-robed elder was also confused, especially when he saw the surging demonic aura on Ling Zhao's body. It made him feel a little terrified. You are really not here for me. Ling Zhao's heart trembled. He held the golden talisman in his hand. Could it be Qingchan? But what kind of identity did she have that the Saint sect would spend so much effort to find her? They did not even want to kill the demonic aura, but wanted to capture her? Conspiracy. This was the smell of a conspiracy. The heavens are really protecting the Saint sect. I did not expect to have such an unexpected gain today. The golden-robed elder looked up to the sky and laughed. His divine light was unparalleled, illuminating thousands of miles of the sky. An eighth-grade divine emperor was the top in the Shenzhou. To be honest, if not for the divine soul clone of the mysterious sky sect master, Ling Xiao would not have dared to bring it into the realm so easily. Otherwise, with the divine envoy's means, he might have been able to break the realm barrier and escape. Damn it! Behind Ling Xiao, Yi Qingchan's eyes flickered. The ancient soul's voice was filled with anger. He's here for me. Humph! He was here for you. But now, your little Taoist companion has a guilty conscience and exposed her identity. I'm afraid she won't be able to escape today. What? It's my fault. Yi Qingchan clenched her jade-like hands. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears. But I have a way to kill this person. The ancient soul's voice was filled with temptation. Yi Qingchan's eyes flashed with bitterness. She had guessed it. If she wanted to survive today's calamity, there was only one way: merge their divine souls. When the original soul awakened, Yi Qingchan's cultivation would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Even if she could not recover to her peak, it should not be too difficult to fight against an 8th-grade divine emperor. Yi Qingchan knew that the ancient soul came from the upper world and had broken through the shackles of heaven and earth. But when she thought about how she would become another version of herself, a version of herself that hated Ling Xiao, she felt as if her heart was being cut by a sharp blade. "Isn't it too early for you to be happy?" Above the void, Ling Xiao looked coldly at the golden figure in the distance. The surprise in his eyes gradually dissipated and turned into a cold and mocking look. Although there was an extremely terrifying existence in the Great Zhou Imperial Palace, but it was unlikely that he had reached the 8th rank. With the strength in his hands, it should be enough to deal with the Zhou clan. In that case, young master. Just as Ling Xiao was about to transform into a Dao Lord, Yi Qingchan suddenly stretched out her hand and gently grasped his hand. It was ice cold to the touch, but it was as resolute as an obsession. "Qingchan, don't be afraid. With me here, no one will be able to hurt you." Ling Xiao's lips curled into a gentle smile as he gently caressed the girl's face. Very suddenly, Yi Qingchan's face bloomed with radiance, but there were tears in her eyes. "Young master, I'm sorry. I've implicated you. In the future, when I'm not by your side, you must remember to be happy." Yi Qingchan gently leaned into Ling Xiao's arms, but the golden-robed divine envoy in the distance had a disdainful expression. "There's no need to say goodbye. I'll send the two of you down together." Boom! However, the moment he finished speaking, the originally clear sky suddenly darkened for a moment. Immediately after, 3 illusory images of azure dragons suddenly meandered over from the distant mountains. In an instant, they pierced through the void and bit towards the divine envoy. Array formation? The golden-robed divine envoy's eyes narrowed slightly, but his expression remained calm. On his 2 palms, the spiritual light formed a seal that instantly shattered the void and suppressed the dragon images. "Qingchan, what are you talking about? If you're not by my side, where do you think you're going?" Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He had long known that Yi Qingchan had the innate wisdom of an expert in her body. Ever since she came to the western border, she would often show a disappointed expression. Therefore, Ling Xiao roughly guessed that the innate wisdom should have been awakened. However, once she merged with Yi Qingchan's divine soul, the latter would definitely become her original self. Then, all of Ling Xiao's previous efforts would be completely wasted. Although Yi Qingchan's strength was not great, her luck was real. Let her go. That was impossible. "Young master, since I'm the one who caused this disaster, let me deal with it alone. Let him out, let me out, and then stay away from me." Until now, Yi Qingchan was still worried about Ling Xiao's safety. She was very afraid. She was afraid that if she became another person, it would be disadvantageous to Ling Xiao. "Qingchan, what are you thinking? He's just an 8th-grade divine emperor. I can kill him with a wave of my hand." Boom! In the sky, the dragon images shattered and the void shook. Although there was a slight fluctuation in the aura of the divine envoy of the Saint sect, it was obvious that he was not weakened at all. The 9 dragons' heaven prison array required 9 dragon veins to unleash the true power of the ancient killing array. What? Yi Qingchan's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly as she looked at Ling Xiao in disbelief. "He's bragging. Yi Qingchan, if you hesitate any longer, both of you will die here today." The ancient soul's voice was filled with anger. Now was the best time for her to merge with Yi Qingchan. If she missed this opportunity, she was afraid that she would really die here today. 300 years of waiting, 300 years of hatred, had already filled her heart with resentment. She could not die. She wanted to kill all those who betrayed her. "Qingchan, I know that there's actually another you in your body. I just want to ask you one thing. Do you want strength? Or do you want to be with me forever?" Ling Xiao's face was gentle, and there seemed to be a scarlet light flashing in his eyes. Of course I want to be with you forever. There was no hesitation or reluctance. Strength? That's just what I want to rely on to be with you. Even if you become a demon, you won't regret it? I won't regret it. As long as I can be with you, I won't regret anything. Yi Qingchan's eyes flashed with stubbornness as her jade-like hands clenched tightly. The panic on her pretty face seemed to have dissipated a lot at this moment. At this moment, Ling Zhao's indifference seemed to contain an inexplicable magical power that made her heart gradually calm down. You said you can kill him with a wave of your hand. Then you must be able to kill him, right? All right, then you can wait here in peace. After I kill this person, I'll help you get rid of the innate intelligence in your body. Ling Zhao grinned, and the void behind him began to overflow with demonic intent. In just a short moment, his figure seemed to become ethereal, tall, and insufferably arrogant. Especially his eyes, which were strangely divided into two colors. One was a sea of blood with a black moon floating in it. The other was eternal darkness, as if it was the beginning of the end of the world. Chapter 436. This aura, you really are the sky demon. Thousands of miles away, the divine emissary of the sacred sect was shocked. The sky demon. If a great demon hadn't appeared in the Shenzhou 300 years ago, how could they, who were mere ants from the lower world, know the true meaning of the sky demon? Even now, although everyone in Shenzhou was terrified at the mention of demons, it was only because back then, that demon had slaughtered millions of people. God emperors were like ants in front of him. Everyone said that the demon had died in the hands of the sacred sect. In fact, only the elders of the sacred sect knew that the demon was not killed by the sacred sect. Moreover, the divine master of the sacred sect colluded with the demon and fell into the demon's path. If the divine master hadn't come from the upper world to kill the demon and kill the traitor, the Shenzhou would have fallen into the demon's hands. Even so, he didn't expect to see the descendant of the sky demon in the Shenzhou. Unfortunately, the divine master of the sacred sect had already set up a trap. The demon was only a divine general. Killing him was like crushing an ant. The sky demon. In the forest far away, Qiu Qinghan's face turned pale. However, she was inexplicably excited. I didn't expect him to be the sky demon, but the divine emissary obviously didn't know his identity. Then, who is Yi Qingchan? I have a question. Will the divine emissary tell me personally, or will I search his soul after I kill him? Ling Zhao stepped out and stood in the air. He looked calmly at the golden-robed elder in the distance. At this moment, Xing Shun and the others were standing quietly on the mountain peak. They were all on high alert. Even if they all attacked together, they wouldn't be a match for an 8th-grade divine emperor. Moreover, the experts of the sacred sect had many tricks up their sleeves. They were far more powerful than ordinary divine emperors. I've lived for so long, but I've never seen such an arrogant and ignorant person like you. Do you really think that the sky demon is invincible? The golden-robed divine emissary looked disdainful. He wasn't invincible in this world. However, those who could kill him were all from the sacred sect. A mere young divine general dared to threaten to kill him? Ridiculous. Oh, you'll see it today. Ling Zhao smiled indifferently and raised his palm. In my world, I am invincible. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic will around him suddenly surged. An extremely gloomy aura instantly spread for thousands of miles, covering the sky and the sun. So what if you're a sky demon? How dare a divine general act so fiercely in front of this emperor? The oracle of the saint shook his head and sneered with disdain in his eyes. Although the sky-covering demon Qi was indeed terrifying, and it was even affecting his state of mind. If he was given more time to grow, the calamity of the Shenzhou continent would most likely repeat itself. But the demonic might was terrifying, and his strength was not enough. If that was the case, what was there to fear? Sky demon. He was the sky demon. But how is that possible? Within Yi Ching-chan's soul sea, the ancient soul's voice trembled. Although she had already guessed that Ling Xiao was a devil, she had never expected him to be a sky demon. But how is this possible? If he was the sky demon, then now, in midair, the oracle of the saint was surrounded by divine light. The spirit wheel in his hand appeared, and there seemed to be golden palaces floating in the air, exuding endless majesty. But at that moment, Ling Zhao's lips curled into a mocking smile. Who said I was going to kill you? The oracle's expression froze. You're not going to kill me? Are you counting on them? Sect Master, do it. Ling Xiao shook his head and sneered. The golden talisman in his hand suddenly emitted a monstrous light. The sound of Tao rang out, stretching for thousands of miles. Spiritual curtains that resembled the Milky Way fell from the sky, instantly crushing the void. At that moment, an old figure appeared out of thin air above the oracle's head. The divine light around him was dazzling, as if he was an immortal. Sect Master Taishian. The oracle of the saint's face trembled, and a hint of panic finally appeared in his eyes. You dare to protect this devil? Boom! At that moment, Sect Master Taishian did not say a word. He pressed his palm down, and at that moment, the entire territory began to be swept by a gust of wind, and the thunder tribulation descended. An ancient spiritual palm slowly fell from the sky. That speed was extremely slow. However, for some reason, he felt like he was unstoppable. You, Sect Master Taishian, you dare to kill me with just a divided soul? The world began to shatter, and countless mountains were crushed into ashes. The spiritual wheel in the hands of the oracle of the saint's hand emitted a dazzling golden light. Then, it fiercely smashed toward the falling palm. Boom! Everyone could only see a black crack appearing in the void. Two unparalleled, domineering forces with the intent to destroy eternity circulated and surged. The space was like broken ice crystals, collapsing and merging. It was extremely mysterious. Endless divine light began to spread in the territory. The moment the palm and the spiritual wheel touched, time seemed to stop. The spiritual wheel that contained great power did not even last a breath before it was completely shattered. The oracle of the saint's face turned pale, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. No matter how much he trembled, it eventually turned into a shrill scream. The spiritual palm suddenly fell like a meteor from outer space, crushing the figure of the oracle and the 10,000-foot-tall mountain below. Smoke and dust filled the sky, blocking everyone's vision. Sect Master Taishian, who was in the sky, suddenly took a step and disappeared into the sky. As expected of someone from 1,000 years ago, Ling Xiao stood at the top of the sky. Beside him, Yi Ching-chan's beautiful eyes were also filled with shock. An 8th-grade divine emperor was crushed to death with one palm. How powerful was that? But before Yi Ching-chan and the others could lament for too long, a figure suddenly swept over from the smoke and dust below. It was Sect Master Taishian. In his hand, the oracle of the saint had already lost his human form, but his vitality was still there. Obviously, he was not completely dead. Greetings, my lord. When Sect Master Taishian bowed, Yi Ching-chan's pretty face almost instantly froze. At this moment, even the ancient soul in her soul let out a series of screams in disbelief. How is it possible? How can Sect Master Taishian bow down to the sky demon? Thank you for your hard work, Sect Master. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and looked coldly at the oracle of the saint, whose eyes were filled with hatred. Oracle, it seems that you have miscalculated. As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Xiao clenched his hand, and the immemorial demonic blade instantly appeared in his hand. Then he stabbed the oracle between his eyebrows. My lord, no. Sect Master Taishian shook his head and sighed softly. The soul sea of the elders of the saint has been sealed. Once the soul is destroyed, it will definitely be detected by the divine master. Oh, this method. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. As expected, there must be some unspeakable secrets between the Saint Palace of Blood Soul and the Saint. I will help my lord to extract his soul. My lord can prepare a doctrine artifact to seal his spiritual soul. Sect Master Taishuan's figure gradually faded. Ling Xiao did not hesitate and took out a doctrine tripod from the Ring of Cosmos and handed it to Sect Master Taishian. Sect Master Taishian clenched his fist, and a look of unwillingness appeared on the face of the Oracle of the Saint. In the end, his spiritual soul left his body and was sealed into the doctrine tripod by Sect Master Taishian. You will regret this. There are countless spies of the Saint in the western border. Once I disappear, the Divine Master will definitely detect it. By then, all of you will die. The Oracle roared furiously, and his tone was filled with hatred. Oh, thank you for telling me. Hearing this, a smile appeared on Ling Xiao's face. Beside him, a shadow appeared, and then, under the dumbfounded gaze of the divine emissary of the Holy Church, it transformed into his appearance. What the F*** CK? Chapter 437. My lord, I can't hold on for too long. Lord Dragon General asked me to send a message. The evil dragon guards are already training. Don't worry, my lord. The Lord of Taishian bowed, and his figure finally dissipated. Ling Xiao looked at the cauldron in his hand coldly. Sealing the spirit meant that he could not search for the information in the spirit sea of the divine envoy. However, this person was already trapped. He had plenty of time to torture him. Loyalty? There was no such thing as absolute loyalty in this world. It was just that there was not enough bargaining chips for betrayal, or there was not enough pain. The demonic sword swung and swallowed the body of the divine envoy. A golden light fell and was caught by Ling Xiao. Divine order? Ling Xiao nodded and smiled. He threw it to Folded Shadow. From today onwards, you are the divine envoy of the Saint Sect. Go and find the traces of Xiaofeng. Let the world believe that he is a demon. A true demon. Yes. Stacked Shadow bowed, and his figure instantly disappeared on the spot. You will regret it. You will definitely regret it. Hearing that, the spirit sealed in the cauldron roared angrily. However, when he saw Ling Xiao's lowered eyes, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. How should I deal with you? Ling Xiao turned to look at Yi Qingchuan. At this moment, the girl's face was also pale. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. However, this trace of emotion was not shown by Yi Qingchuan herself. It was produced by the ancient soul in her spirit sea. She had already seen the sky demon's methods. Inexplicably, at this moment, a hint of regret appeared in the ancient soul's heart. If she had known this would happen, she would not have exposed herself so early. As long as Yi Qingchuan cultivated step by step, their spirits would eventually merge. But now, Qingchuan, go to the heavenly hall and wait for me. I will deal with these ants first. Ling Xiao gently rubbed the girl's face. Then he held the cauldron in his hand and went down. There, a beautiful figure in white started to escape into the distance. You want to escape? This is my world. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. He took a step forward, and lightning wings flapped behind him. In an instant, he appeared in front of Qiu Qinghan. Young Master Qiu, we meet again. At this moment, Qiu Qinghan was still wearing white clothes. Her hair was tied up, and she was dressed like a young master. However, this time, there was no longer any trace of coldness on her face. Instead, there was a hint of seriousness. After witnessing Ling Xiao's methods and ruthlessness, she had long been in awe of this 17 or 18-year-old youth. Beep! The woman of destiny is in awe. Congratulations to host for plundering 300 luck points and 3,000 villain points. Young Master Xiao. A bitter expression appeared on Qiu Qinghan's face. Although she had long felt that Ling Xiao's body had a kind of demonic aura that made her feel terrified, she had never seen it before. However, she had never expected that the infamous descendant of the Ling people was actually the forbidden demon body that the Holy Church had been searching for. Sky Demon. This name made her feel terrified, but she also felt an inexplicable sense of anticipation. I never thought that young Master Chiu was a member of the Holy Church. What a pity. I felt like old friends at first sight, but when we meet again, things have changed. Ling Xiao sighed softly, but the corners of his mouth curled up into a playful smile. This Chiu Qinghan knew his identity, but she did not feel despair. Instead, she felt respect. If that's the case, can I subdue her? Young Master is wrong. Not only am I not a member of the Holy Church, I hate the Holy Church to death. Chiu Qinghan sighed and looked at Ling Xiao calmly. Oh, young Master Chiu, do you think that I will let you go just because you said that? What's the difference between dying today and dying tomorrow? It's just a matter of struggling at death's door. As long as the Holy Church is not eliminated, this world will forever be a cage. However, what Ling Xiao did not expect was that Chiu Qinghan only shook her head. Her eyes were filled with sadness. Who are you? Cold Moon Celestial Palace, Han Qing Chiu. Chiu Qinghan pulled down the hairpin on her head. Her black hair fell down like a waterfall. Her beautiful face revealed a touch of charm. Ling Xiao had seen many peerless women before. However, he had to admit that this Han Qing Chiu had a different temperament. Her eyebrows and eyes hid 30% elegance and 70% beauty. She was like a reflection in a mirror, a shadow under the moon, a person in a painting. She was gentle and demure, untainted by the mortal world. However, she had a kind of inexperience that was neither close nor distant. After removing her disguise, her beauty was revealed. It's really you. However, at this moment, Ling Xiao was not surprised at all. When he first saw Chiu Qinghan, he had already guessed the latter's identity. A peerless demon that did not even put the Empress Dowager in her eyes must have a terrifying background. In the entire western border, it was likely that only the successors of the ancient sects, which were above the empires, would have such courage and boldness. So, the Cold Moon Celestial Palace is also backed by the Saint Sect? With Ling Xiao's means, it would be more convenient to capture Han Qing Chiu and search her soul directly. However, after all, this woman still had 3,800 points of fate. Moreover, she was by the side of the Saint Sect's divine envoy. If he used her as a spy, there might be an unexpected surprise. Yes and no. Everyone knows that the previous palace master of Cold Moon, Celestial Palace, ascended to the upper world and left behind the secret of becoming an immortal. However, they do not know that the palace master was actually killed by the Saint Sect. The current Cold Moon Celestial Palace is just a puppet supported by the Saint Sect to control the western border. Han Qing Chiu's beautiful eyes flashed with killing intent. However, Ling Xiao only nodded calmly. That's right. No matter what sect or power, they would not allow anyone to be above them. The 8 imperial courts had always believed in killing. How could they allow an ancient sect with less than 1,000 people to occupy the central sacred ground where the spiritual qi was the densest? There must be something fishy about this. The cultivation of the palace master of Cold Moon, Celestial Palace, was profound. However, she was only an emperor god. She had not transcended the shackles and was not enough to intimidate the 8 imperial courts. Of course, Sect Master Tai Xian was an exception. After all, he was a figure from 1,000 years ago. Even the Saint Sect did not dare to provoke him, let alone the group of 5th and 6th grade emperor gods in the eastern border. However, what surprised Ling Xiao was that this Han Qing Chiu looked no more than 20 years old. How did she know such a secret? So, why do you hate the Saint Sect? There must be something fishy about this. This Han Qing Chiu must be hiding a great secret. Could it be another person who had been reborn? Young Master, you may not know this. In the western border, for the past 300 years, there would be famous demons and experts who would go missing every few decades. According to my speculation, these people should have been killed by the Saint Sect. They all have one thing in common, which is they have Dao laws. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, he felt a chill in his heart. It was not that he had not considered this problem. After all, although the emperor gods he had seen so far were powerful, there were very few who had comprehended Tao laws. Even if there were a few who had Tao laws, they were only first or second-grade emperor gods. Moreover, they were not old. However, looking at the history of Shengzhou for 1,000 years, those who had broken through the void and ascended to the upper world were all geniuses. Why did Shengzhou suddenly become desolate in the past 300 years? Originally, Ling Xiao thought that the spiritual qi in this world had started to dry up. However, after hearing Han Qingxiu's words, he suddenly had a bold guess. Could it be that 300 years was a coincidence? Chapter 438. Although I don't know what the Saint sect wants to do, but a few years ago, I sensed that someone was monitoring me. Han Qingxiu's face was bitter. She looked at Ling Xiao with an inexplicable meaning in her eyes. I think with your talent, you must have been noticed by the Saint sect a long time ago. I see. Ling Xiao nodded. There is a trace of solemnity between his brows. 300 years ago, the first forbidden body appeared. After briefly stirring up the situation in the Shengzhou, it disappeared without a trace. 300 years ago, the Nine Nether clan was massacred by the entire clan, and the ones who killed them were the revered Holy Church. From Nine Nether's remaining memories, it was not only the Nine Nether clan that was killed. There were many experts and clans that were killed. In that case, it seemed that the Saint sect had been doing the same thing since 300 years ago. Suddenly, a trace of coldness flashed in Ling Xiao's eyes. Killing demons and experts who had comprehended Tao laws? Was it to control the situation in the Shengzhou, or for cultivation? But, according to the rumors, the first forbidden demonic body had already stepped into the third transformation realm. Moreover, Liang Yi had said that he might have fused with the Sky Demon's real bone. Wait, could it be? The aura of his Sky Demon's real bone gave Liang Yi an illusion? Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. There seemed to be a chill around him. If it's true, does it mean that the Saint sect's divine master, F***CK, this kind of boldness is even more shameless than me? Keeping a region in captivity just to strengthen oneself? But there are so many experts in the Saint sect. How did that person hide from the world? So, you want to rebel against the Saint sect just to save your life? Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at Han Qingxiu. His eyes were filled with a cold light. An unparalleled aura suddenly fell from his body. Before the latter could react, the world in front of her suddenly turned pitch black. Since Han Qingxiu had the potential to be a chess piece, Ling Xiao naturally did not want to kill her easily. But he could not be at ease if he did not search her soul. The Blood Moon Forbidden Zone could transform into the most terrifying nightmare. That way, he would be able to see what she was afraid of and know whether she was telling the truth or not. In the world of darkness, a blood moon gradually rose and fell. Han Qingxiu's eyes were filled with despair. However, there was a complicated bitterness at the corner of her mouth. She had guessed that Ling Xiao would not let her off so easily. After all, if the truth about the Sky Demon's true form was exposed, it would be an intolerable situation. Although the shady dealings of the Saint in the dark were not much worse than those of the demons. But now, the divine master of the sacred cult was invincible in this world, and he was wearing the lofty mantle of the leader of the righteous path. Therefore, the people of the world were ignorant and would never believe that the Saint sect was sinister. However, Ling Xiao was different. Although he had many tricks up his sleeve, he was only a divine general. If he was not careful, he would definitely be consigned to eternal damnation. But just as Han Qingxiu's heart was filled with despair, a figure suddenly appeared in front of her. She was extremely beautiful, with fair skin. She wore a cold robe that was decorated with stars, giving her a refined feeling. Palace Master, why are you still living in this world? Palace Master, I just want to avenge you. Avenge? With just you? I have worked so hard to train you for 200 years. It was not easy for me to sacrifice you, but I met with an unexpected disaster. Tell me, did you deliberately harm me? The moon-robed woman's beautiful face suddenly turned ferocious. Like a malicious spirit, she rushed towards Han Qingxiu. No, Palace Master, I have endured for 100 years and worked hard to cultivate, just to avenge you, even if I have to give up my life. I will not refuse. Han Qingqiu's eyes were filled with confusion and sorrow. But just as the moon-robed woman's palm was about to strike, the sky suddenly lit up with a ray of light. Then, Ling Zhao's figure floated down, and the whole world regained its clarity. Han Qingqiu looked at the young man in front of her in a daze. The sorrow on her beautiful face had not completely disappeared. Ling Zhao, on the other hand, only frowned and stared at her. In the end, he just nodded and chuckled. At this moment, he had made a decision. Enduring for 100 years and working hard to cultivate, but there was no trace of life in her body. This Han Qingqiu was not simple. Such a sincere and beautiful woman. Could she help him open the complete Blood Moon Forbidden Zone? Now, although Ling Zhao's Sky Demon's pupil had awakened the second Forbidden Zone when Yin Qingyun returned to her body, it was not complete. In order to awaken the final pupil of the sixth Dao, Ling Zhao had to first open the complete Blood Moon Forbidden Zone. Since ancient times, cultivators had to cut off their emotions to become emotionless and desireless. As for how to have emotions, emotions will develop over time. Actually, Yi Qingchan was not bad. She would definitely succeed if she was cut off. But her identity was too bad. Moreover, her upper limit was extremely high. Ancient soul reincarnation. Her identity must be extremely terrifying. She might even be related to the upper realm. This point could be seen from the fact that the Saint Sect's divine master wanted to kill her at all costs. So, Yi Qingchan would probably accompany Ling Zhao for a long time in the future. And this Han Qingqiu, Ling Zhao could roughly guess her origin. So, her ending might be destined. There are some things that did not need to be pointed out. Otherwise, it would not be easy to make the talented woman submit. I can help you take revenge. Ling Zhao looked at Han Qingqiu indifferently. Or rather, in the entire Xingzhou, only I can help you take revenge. I know. The reason why I helped the Holy Church to look for Yi Qingchan was because Han Qingqiu's face was bitter. She wanted to say something, but stopped. But Ling Zhao already understood her thoughts. With her current strength, she would be killed by the Saint Sect before she could grow. And the person that the Saint Sect's divine envoy was looking for must be an extremely threatening existence. Han Qingqiu's purpose was naturally to find out the identity of this person and see if she could obtain an opportunity from it. Do you know Yi Qingchan's identity? This was what Ling Zhao was most concerned about. If the Saint Sect's divine master really fused with the Sky Demon's forbidden physique, then who in the entire Xingzhou would be worthy of his fear? He was the lord of the Xingzhou, and by chance, he obtained the Sky Demon's inheritance. Someone worthy of his fear would definitely not be someone from this world. But Yi Qingchan was someone that Ling Zhao brought from the Four Barren Lands to the Xingzhou. What kind of background could she have? A goddess from the upper world? Or the successor of an ancient sect from the upper world? But how did she know the divine master's secret that made the latter go through so much trouble to find her? Suddenly, Ling Zhao felt a trace of confusion. Could it be that there was some shocking secret hidden in this? I don't know. I only know that the divine master ordered to find a woman who has comprehended the Tao law of extreme ice and kill her without mercy. Han Qingqiu shook her head. She was also confused. In the past, Cold Moon Immortal Palace had helped the Saint Sect to find people, especially people who cultivated the Demon Tao. But this time it was obviously different. The four divine envoys of the Saint Sect had personally come to the Four Barren Lands. It was enough to show the importance of the Divine Master. And this was also the reason why she wanted to take revenge with the help of the Lady of Extreme Ice. Forget it. I will ask Qingchan personally. Go back to the sect first and don't spread the news. I still need some time to set up some measures in the Western Barren Lands. In the end, Ling Zhao did not ask any more questions. The fog was everywhere. The Xingzhou was really getting more and more chaotic. But no matter what the Saint Sect's divine master was plotting, there would be a day when the two of them would fight to the death. As for Han Qingqiu, of course, he would not let her go so easily. Even if the fear and resentment she felt in the illusion was real, the human heart was unpredictable. Moreover, Han Qingqiu was not a human. Some tests were necessary. Young master, actually, you can use me to hide your identity. At this moment, a cold smile flashed across Han Qingqiu's pretty face. There was a faint trace of expectation in her beautiful eyes. Chapter 439. Use you? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. He threw Han Qingqiu a meaningful look. Ow! The current Cold Moon Celestial Lord is a member of the sacred religious sect. Although they will definitely attack me in the end, they value my practice a lot. Yes, raising and killing pigs were indeed the tricks that strong people often used. Don't ask me how I, a great light of the righteous path, know that. It's just my guess. What do you want to do? Young master, since you used Jiangchun and Xiafeng to attract the world attention, why don't you seize the opportunity to hold the blame firmly? Since it was a cooperation, Han Qingqiu certainly wanted to win Ling Xiao's trust. If she could make him fall in love with her, then wouldn't Ling Xiao become a puppet in her hands? Han Qingqiu was quite confident in her own charm. Oh, you mean... Ling Xiao's smile became bigger, but he was mocking her in his heart. Han Qingqiu was smart, but sometimes it wasn't a good thing to be too smart. The sacred religious sect probably wanted to kill her for the doctrine principles in her. But Ling Xiao knew her real secret by then. A secret that could drive the whole sacred prefecture crazy. And this was why he had the nerve to manipulate Han Qingqiu. Once she betrayed him, she would definitely end up in a miserable state. Of course, before that, he still had to make some arrangements. For example, memory erasure, holy soul engraving. The palace lord sent me down the mountain to help the divine envoy find someone. Unfortunately, I fell into the hands of the true demon, Jiangchun. Jiangchun took the opportunity to blackmail the Cold Moon Celestial Palace. Young master, you killed the demon. In this way, Han Qingqiu's eyes were enchanting, full of charm. However, Ling Xiao nodded with a smile. Great. In this way, you'll have both a treasure and a name, but to be on the safe side, you'd better erase your memory. Yes. Han Qingqiu didn't hesitate at all. She curled up the corners of her mouth. For the moment, Ling Xiao was her only hope for revenge. Not to mention erasing her memory, even that she wouldn't refuse. As long as she could destroy the sacred religious sect, it would be worth it to cut off her immortal root and start from scratch. Buzz, remember, Ling Xiao is your master. Ling Xiao's lips curled up. Just like how he dealt with Bai Jishi, he buried a voice deep within Han Qingqiu's soul. The advantage of this divine soul engraving was that no matter how high the cultivation of an expert was, they would not be able to detect any abnormalities. But at the same time, this method wouldn't take effect immediately. Instead, it would subtly influence one's mind. In fact, those who held firm in their hearts might not necessarily be engraved. How are you going to send a message to Cold Moon Immortal Palace? Looking at the dazed Han Qingqiu in front of him, Ling Xiao said indifferently. Mas, young master, I have the Cold Moon Immortal Palace's divine sound transmission talisman. Han Qingqiu flipped her hand, and a bright golden talisman appeared in her hand. However, Ling Xiao merely nodded calmly. Have the Frost Moon Palace Master send 5 Dao artifacts, 100 divine artifacts, and 100 spirit pills above grade 4 to redeem you. Remember, ask her to send a demon from the Immortal Palace to Pingyang Mountain. I will only give her 1 day. If she dares to play any tricks, she will come and collect your corpse. Demon from the Immortal Palace? Other than me, there is another person from the Frost Moon Palace Master's lineage. He is my eldest senior brother. But, young master, a trace of hesitation flashed across Han Qingqiu's pretty face. 5 Dao artifacts, 100 divine artifacts, and 100 spirit pills above grade 4. To the Cold Moon Immortal Palace, this was terrifying. But with the temperament of the Frost Moon Palace Master, she might not be willing to take out such a treasure in exchange for her life. Of course, she didn't dare to say anything at this moment. Instead, she followed Ling Xiao's instructions and sent a message to the Frost Moon Palace Master. Ling Xiao looked at the Sky Palace in the distance with a serious expression. How could he not think of the things that Han Qing Qiu thought of? Just those 5 Dao artifacts were enough to give the Frost Moon Immortal Palace a headache. Dao artifacts were something that every top force had, but there wouldn't be too many of them. Moreover, the Frost Moon Immortal Palace was a sect and not an empire. It was established here to guard the western border for the Saint sect. It wasn't like an empire where there were countless empires under its command. But even if the Frost Moon Palace Master was unwilling, Han Qingqiu was still a prodigy favored by the Saint sect. Now that the Saint sect's divine envoy was here, she would definitely ask for his opinion before doing anything. At that time, not only would he be able to get the treasure smoothly, he would also be able to find a suitable excuse for Han Xiuqing to escape. Of course, the matter of slaying demons had to be done in front of the Saint sect's divine envoy in order to appear grand. As for why they sent a prodigy from the Frost Moon Immortal Palace, of course, it was to take a gamble and see if this prodigy had any luck. If the gamble was right, wouldn't it be another small surprise? Wait here for the news from the Frost Moon Palace Master. Ling Xiao didn't explain and turned to walk towards the Sky Palace in the distance. It was time to solve the problem of the innate intelligence in Yi Qingchan's body. From the beginning, Ling Xiao knew that there was an innate intelligence in Yi Qingchan's soul sea. After awakening, it would become a new self. Moreover, those who could maintain the reincarnation cycle of innate intelligence were the strongest existences in the world. Originally, Ling Xiao wanted to capture Yi Qingchan's heart and make her obsessed. Then, even if she completely awakened one day, she would still be of use to him. But now, it seemed that Yi Qingchan alone was unable to deal with the karma of her previous life. When Ling Xiao's figure appeared in the Sky Palace, Yi Qingchan had been waiting for a long time. At this moment, there was a faint sadness on her face. No matter how much she trusted Ling Xiao, she was clear about the terror of the ancient soul in her soul sea. The so-called innate intelligence was actually 2 souls in one body. When the cultivation level was high enough, the ancient soul would slowly awaken and become stronger. In the end, it would devour her divine soul and reappear in her previous life. And Ling Xiao was just a young prodigy. How could he compete with someone from hundreds of years ago? Young master. Yi Qingchan gently leaned into Ling Xiao's arms and slowly closed her eyes. Everything is settled? Yes. Ling Xiao smiled and gently stroked Yi Qingchan's jade-like back. At this moment, he could feel the latter's nervousness and uneasiness. But how could a mere ancient soul make things difficult for him? Young master, that young master Qiu, is a woman, right? Yes? You can tell too? Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at Yi Qingchan in surprise. Coincidentally, she raised her head and looked at him. When their eyes met, Yi Qingchan's eyes immediately teared up. Young master, although I really want to stay by your side, but if I really die here today, please bury me here. What nonsense are you talking about? Let me finish. Young master, I know that an outstanding man like you can't only have one woman. Qingchan is really honored to be able to accompany you. Let Qingchan accompany you forever. Even if I die, I want to die in young master's arms. Yi Qingchan's jade-like hands slowly tightened. She seemed to want to melt into Ling Xiao's arms. At this moment, the ancient soul in her soul sea became inexplicably silent. She didn't know why, but after knowing Ling Xiao's true identity, her heart was filled with an inexplicable uneasiness. I've said it before. As long as you don't want to, no one can force you to leave. Not even the other you in your body. Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. A domineering aura shot up to the sky and completely shattered the dark clouds above his head. In the domain, the demonic sun covered the sky. The light was extinguished, and the divine might was vast and mighty. Chapter 440. Young master? Yi Qingchan's beautiful eyes widened. Looking at Ling Zhao's gentle face, her face suddenly bloomed with a touch of moving brilliance. It was as if as long as he was around, there would be no setbacks in this world. It's the feeling of peace. Qingchan, I can help you solve the problem of the ancient soul. But you have to know that once I make a move, it might be difficult for your cultivation to recover to the peak. Ling Xiao sighed, his face showing some hesitation. Ha, what a joke. Yi Qingchan's providence was close to 4,000. Even if it can't be completely awakened, it will definitely be a deterrent in the future. At this moment, Ling Xiao only wanted to let her accept in her heart that she was the one who killed her other self and not Ling Xiao. Young master, as long as you don't dislike Qingchan, even if Qingchan loses my cultivation, Qingchan is willing to stay by your side. Yi Qingchan's bright eyes were filled with emotions, and her beautiful face showed a touch of determination. Cultivation is just to be by your side. But if the end of this immortal path is to forget you, what's the point of cultivating? It's better to be immortal and accompany you day and night. Isn't that very happy? All right, since you have decided. Ling Xiao nodded, but the corner of his mouth raised into a trace of evil. Lose my cultivation? My baby, what are you thinking about? At this moment, the ancient soul in Yi Qingchan's soul suddenly felt an inexplicable chill. Yi Qingchan, you are crazy. If you lose your cultivation, he will definitely abandon you. He is a demon and has no feelings at all. He is only using you. Yi Qingchan was not moved at all. Use? Only valuable people can be used by young master. I only hope that he can use me for a longer time. This way, I can stay by his side for a longer time. Yi Qingchan, I promise you I don't hate him. There must be some misunderstanding. I promise you, even if we merge, I am willing to help him, okay? Yi Qingchan, say something. Gu Hun's voice trembled, but Yi Qingchan calmly shook her head. In order to prevent Ling Xiao from being harmed in the slightest, she was even willing to give up her life. How could she dare to bear the risk of the fusion of the two? At that time, she would no longer be herself. What trust would there be? Yi Qingchan, don't force me. I don't believe that he has the means to erase me. Do you believe that I can forcefully fuse with you right now? The ancient soul roared in despair. But how could she forcefully fuse with it? Yi Qingchan was the one in charge of this body. Everything she said was just to make Yi Qingchan compromise. Qingchan, fuse this item into your soul sea and refine that ancient soul. Even if your strength can't recover to its peak, it will still be of some help. At this moment, a dense blood-red light suddenly filled the air in front of Ling Xiao. The blood-red moon that was originally suspended in midair suddenly turned into a stream of light and fell, quietly floating in front of Ling Xiao. Soul-sucking ghost pearl, the treasure of the ghost clan in the upper realm. Its grade was unknown. In other words, the setting of this pearl was beyond the scope of the Shengzhou state. For any remnant soul, this treasure was taboo. Of course, with Ling Zhao's means, it was not impossible to directly invade Yi Qingchan's soul sea and devour the ancient soul. But who the hell knew the origin of that ancient soul and its cultivation level? Once she hit her means, Ling Zhao's fate would be to be defeated. It was not worth it. Yi Qingchan would definitely have a breakthrough in her cultivation if she fused with it. She might even be able to uncover the secrets of this ancient soul. After all, she was currently the most loyal woman by Ling Zhao's side. The stronger she was, the more useful she would be to Ling Xiao. Come on, Qingchan, fuse with it and devour that ancient soul. From then on, you are you, and you don't have to worry about being replaced. Ling Zhao's voice was full of temptation. Yi Qingchan gritted her teeth and fused with the soul-sucking ghost pearl into her soul sea. No, how could this pearl be in your hands? At this moment, the ancient soul finally understood why a mere 17-year-old boy was so confident that he could fuse with it. Soul-sucking ghost pearl, the treasure of the ghost clan in the Azure world. It was rumored that this treasure was the key to the ghost clan's prosperity. Historically, Only those with the purest ghost clan bloodline could inherit it. But how could it appear in the Shengzhou state? And how could it fall into the hands of a human boy? Yi Qingchan, stop it. This pearl is extremely evil. It's harming you. Once you fuse with this pearl, you will be affected by the ghost chi and fall into the ghost path. However, the ancient soul screams were meaningless. Yi Qingchan's eyes quietly turned blood red, and the soul-sucking ghost pearl appeared in her soul sea. It turned into a monstrous blood-red light and enveloped the ancient soul. No, Yi Qingchan, you will regret this. You will definitely regret this. My Foley ACE will notice the abnormality in this world sooner or later. When that time comes, you and him will not be tolerated in this world. No, it will not be tolerated by the 9 heavens. Buzz. An ear-piercing buzz resounded. Ling Xiao coldly looked at Yi Qingchan, whose expression changed from ferocious to calm, and then to indifferent. He held the demonic saber in his hand, and the lightning wings on his back bloomed. He was secretly on guard. Time slowly passed. For hours later, tribulation clouds suddenly gathered in the sky above the realm. Countless winding tribulation lightning bolts descended from the sky. The deep black color made everyone's scalp tingle. However, just like the last time, before the lightning could descend from the sky, the entire world froze. Whoosh! Icy rain fell from the sky like fireworks. Although it was short, it symbolized a new life. Yi Qingchan slowly opened her eyes. At first glance, there was a sense of loss and absolute coldness. But when she saw the gentle and determined face in front of her, she could no longer suppress the tears in her eyes. The background music started. The cold, icy rain slapped her face randomly, and her warm tears mixed with the cold rain. Yi Qingchan lifted her feet, turned into a green shadow, and rushed into Ling Zhao's arms. The two of them did not speak. They just hugged each other tightly. And then, Yi Qingchan looked up and kissed Ling Zhao on the lips. Although it was a little cold, the atmosphere gradually became warm. Rustle. Her green robe fell, revealing a touch of snow-white skin. Ling Zhao's imperial robe dissipated. He picked Yi Qingchan up from the ground, and then whoosh. But just when the two of them were in a daze, the sound of rushing wind suddenly came from the distant sky. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed, and he looked into the distance. There were ironclad rules in the realm. Unless summoned, one could not peek into the heavenly palace. Otherwise, one would be killed without mercy. Who had the guts to barge into this place? Yi Qingchan panicked and wanted to struggle out of Ling Zhao's arms, but the latter still pressed her against his body intimately. Huh. In the distant void, Han Qingqiu's footsteps suddenly stopped. Her beautiful eyes looked at the two of them hugging each other tightly in the heavenly palace, and she swallowed hard. But just as she turned to escape, she felt a spiritual energy wrap around her body, and she fell in front of the palace. Since you're here, then don't leave. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.